The formal invasion of Gaza has begun. Now, the other day we saw tanks make moves into Gaza, which I think it's fair to say an invasion, but now we're seeing full-scale boots on the ground. There's some wild rumors going around we got to be very careful of, but people are sharing it. Lebanese reporters claiming there's even U.S. troops there. I want to be careful about that because we just don't know for sure and we don't want to fan the flames, but this is getting hot to say the least. And Saudi Arabia is warning the U.S. things could get pretty intense, and they can get pretty intense pretty quickly. So we're going to talk a lot about that. That's basically the dominating story right now. There's mass protests happening at Grand Central Station in New York. Many Jewish individuals who live in New York are protesting what's going on, and this could spiral out of control very quickly. So welcome to your Friday night. Fortunately for us, we have a sponsor that isn't afraid to get behind shows with a great message, and that is castbrew.com. Why? It's my company. So, of course, I sponsor myself, and I'm not worried about my sponsor pulling out of my show. No, but to be fair, there are a lot of companies that don't want to sponsor a show that's going to be like, here's a bunch of war and civilian casualties. And so that's one of the reasons we decided to make a product where we sponsor ourselves, but it's also part of the bigger mission. Go to castbrew.com, buy Cast Brew coffee. We got the limited edition Re-Rise with Roberto Jr. It's limited. It's just for Halloween, and we're making fun of our own dead mascot, which is kind of sad, but we love Roberto Jr. Rest in peace. And look, the bigger mission with Cast Brew is we're building the coffee shop. We're working on the franchise agreements to get that legal and sorted out so we can create places for people to get together and share their ideas, create community locations where y'all can meet up and hang out. And that's part of the bigger picture here. So castbrew.com, support the show, but also go to timcast.com, click join us, become a member to support us directly. If you think the work we do is very good, if you liked the Culture War episode we did this morning, then support our work. But I will say, Culture War soon to be on Tenet Media. I'm really excited for this. Big shout out to everyone over at Tenet Media, Lauren Chen and everyone. I'm really excited. This is going to be a great project. We'll have more on that later. But in the meantime, smash that like button, subscribe to this channel, share the show with your friends. Joining us tonight to talk about Israel is Scott Horton.
Hi, Tim. Thank you for having me.
Who are you? What do you do?
Well, I'm the director of the Libertarian Institute. I'm the editorial director of antiwar.com. I'm the host of the Scott Horton Show. I've got 6,000 interviews, almost 5,960 something, going back to 2003 at scotthorton.org. And I'm the author of Fool's Errand, Time to End the War in Afghanistan, and Enough Already, Time to End the War on Terrorism. And I'm working on Provoked, how Washington started the new Cold War with Russia and the catastrophe in Ukraine.
Oh, wow. And we got Phil Labonte here. You got a book signed. What was that book?
That book was Enough Already by Scott Horton. I am Phil Labonte, lead singer of the heavy metal band All That Remains, very failed musician, anti-communist, and counter-revolutionary. Libby.
Hey, Phil.
Hi.
Hi, everybody. I'm Libby Emmons. I am the editor with the Post Millennial on Human Events, filling in for Ian again. Glad to be here.
Ian's just gone.
He
messaged me. He's like, I'll be back
Ian?
at some.
Yeah.
He's in Miami.
Oh, okay.
He's on vacation. You know, vacations happen.
It's
You know what I
nice
mean?
to take vacation.
You know what happened
I
is
envy Ian a vacation.
he started working out.
A vacation.
Yeah,
What's that?
it's, I don't know. I'm thinking maybe I'll look it up.
Yes.
Must be on Urban Dictionary
Ian
or something.
started working out,
I think it's a slang
and then
term.
now he's doing tactical training with Luke and using guns. And I'm just like, here goes. He said he prayed to Jesus, and I'm like, it's the gym to Jesus pipeline.
He's going to be in a right-wing death squad the next thing you know.
Ian, no. All right, but Ian will be back next week probably. So we got Serge pressing the buttons.
Yo.
Or you introduced yourself already, right? I didn't skip over you.
I did. I'm
Okay,
good.
good.
I'm all good.
We got so wrapped up on Ian.
It's okay.
I am here. I'm waiting for Ian to get back. I'm excited to see him. If anyone's a Springboks supporter, we got a really big game this weekend. We can beat the All Blacks. Anyways.
All right, here we go. Fox News has it. Israel launches second ground incursion into Gaza. Hamas commander killed in airstrike. A bunch of different reports. This is all major breaking news. U.S. won't draw red lines for Israel in war with Hamas, et cetera, et cetera. We've got this story from the Daily Mail. Quote, Hamas will feel our wrath tonight, warns Israel as it unleashes unprecedented airstrikes on Gaza. IDF steps up ground operations and tells Palestinians to flee south now as invasion looms with phone lines and internet cut across the city. You were mentioning just a moment ago, there's a Scott, that one of the I guess rumors or thoughts or whatever is that Israel may try to split the Gaza Strip in half between two cities. Tell us what's going on.
Well, I don't really know. I have an Israeli friend that sent me a message earlier today that said the invasion has begun, and I don't know the extent of it. He actually had also sent me a document that was a few years old that was a military study, an Israeli military study about how to invade and conquer the Strip, and they had a few different ideas about how to go about it. And I guess one of them that my friend who was a veteran, also he's a veteran of the 2006 Lebanon War, or Hezbollah War. He I think thought that this would be the most likely take, that they would invade kind of in the middle of Gaza and divide Khan Yunis from Gaza City. And, they have a hell of a fight. If they're really going, if the doctrine truly is to eradicate Hamas, as they had previously said, to completely eradicate Hamas, they have a real fight on their hands, because they have thousands of guys and they have these very deep tunnels. And in 2014, they started to invade, and Hamas guys were popping up out of the ground, out of all over the place, and they were taking casualties. They were getting up close and kind of ruining the Israelis' advantage by taking them out up close. And the Israelis, they pulled back and instead just went to artillery and air power. So if they're going to truly, quote unquote, clean out the Gaza Strip of Hamas, it's going to cost incredible casualties on both sides.
I just want to mention, we hear it from neo-libs in the United States all the time about gun control, about if you want to go up against the U.S., you need nukes and all that stuff. And it's like, dude, guys with guns are dangerous. You can't occupy a street corner with a drone. You can just terrorize and devastate. But if you want control of something, guys with guns, so that's.
Now, Seymour Hersh, the incredibly important journalist Seymour Hersh, has been writing that he has contacts in Israeli intelligence and in the military and whatever, who are saying that America has delivered these massive bunker buster bombs, which they're essentially dropped from very high altitude and achieve very high speed, and then they have a double charge. The cone fires some kind of superheated charge into the ground to dig a hole down 30, 40 meters. And then the main charge, which is also a shaped charge, that's shaped downward, goes. So that this is how to kill a bunker without having to use a nuke, is to use these massive bunker buster bombs. And then the idea is they're going to try to use these to destroy the Hamas tunnels. But of course, Hamas has dug their tunnels deep enough to try to be protected from those. So we don't know if that'll really work for them or not.
They're going to have to do tunnel rat type tactics like they did in Vietnam. Wow. And one of the things that I was mentioning to Scott earlier that we didn't want to talk about without being on air is this is going to be, if they do decide to go into, really go in full scale, it's going to be like Fallujah, in Iraq. And that was bloody. And a lot of people died. A lot of innocent people died. So the idea that this is going to be some kind of easy fight, that is absolutely not the case. I'm
hoping that it's a crazy thing to hope, but well, not really, but I'm hoping that the Ukraine stuff is fizzling out, and that but I'm not so sure. Right there's talk that the U.S. is losing interest in this because the shifting fight. A shifting fight is better than expanding into World War III. But I got this foreboding feeling as we're preparing the show. Reports that U.S. has led airstrikes on Iranian-backed targets already. Mm-hmm. That's another story we'll pull up in a second. And I'm like, if the U.S. is deploying tens of thousands of 19,000 personnel into the region already, some are saying that they've been deploying the largest NATO fleet ever amassed. I don't know if that's true, but I'm seeing these, these images and various individuals in politics posting these things. May or may not be true. But we saw the announcement last night. The U.S. has deployed many more troops into the region. We're getting more moving from other areas into this area. Feels like World War III.
I have information that there are Delta units being moved into the area either tomorrow or the day after something. So
there are rumors on Twitter right now that U.S. elite forces, Delta forces, are in the conflict already in Gaza. I'm hard pressed to believe that.
Well, there was a picture last week of that they put the incompetence in the White House, posted on Instagram, a picture of Biden shaking hands with Delta Force operators and congratulating them for all the great work that they're doing in Palestine.
They took it down real quick, but
I believe so.
No, those guys were a security detail.
Okay.
Yeah,
they took it down quickly also, but you could when they reposted it with their faces blacked out, you could still see their tattoos.
Yeah. I mean, the operational security there is completely ridiculous. But look, as far as World War III, I don't know about, look, there's slippery slope arguments where Russia ends up involved here, that kind of thing. But look at just the risk of regional war, where we could have, this war very quickly never mind how difficult it is for the people of Gaza and the Israeli conscripts who are invading right now, by the way. But for the region, this very quickly could escalate to war with Hezbollah in southern Lebanon, with all different kinds
It's already in Syria.
of militias in Syria. And why are we in Syria? We're in Syria for Israel, right? Donald Trump tried to get us out of Syria 3 different times, and his military overrode him
Lied.
3 different times. They lied to his face, and they just
Lied to
canceled
us.
his orders 3 times. And why? Because America got rid of Saddam Hussein and empowered Iran. And so now, since the regime change against Assad failed and Iran and Hezbollah had even more influence in Syria than ever before, then America had to stay to occupy that Al-Tanf base on the to block the so-called land bridge from Iran to Beirut. And so that's why our guys are there. And then when Israel goes and does what they're doing in Gaza now, then our guys are at risk. And I actually have a friend whose son is deployed in Syria right now, who's at risk of getting killed over this. You know, there's that guy that ran for Congress in Washington State that almost won, the Republican,
Joe
Kent.
Yeah, Joe Kent.
His wife was killed in Syria after Trump ordered our guys out, and the military said no and just said belay that order.
They said, you got it, Trump. Don't do it.
Yeah, the idea.
Well, and they made him back down actually on the order.
Right.
This has happened 3 times in 2017, 2018, and in his lame duck session in December of 2020. He said, I want our guys out. And they essentially dragged their feet and then forced him to back down and change his mind. And look, this gets to the very bottom line, right? Who listening to this show right now wants Iraq War 4, right? After George W. Bush put Iran's best friends in power in Baghdad. Who wants to go back to Iraq? Who wants to do another war in Syria? Supporting Israel is not in the interests of the United States of America. It's not. And General James Mattis and General David Petraeus, both in candid moments, admitted. They said something very close to, our men pay a price in terms of their security in the Middle East every day because of Israel and what they do in Palestine. And you talk about Fallujah, here's a great example of that. In March of 2004, Sheikh Yassin, who was the founder of Hamas, who Israel had financed and helped for years to grow Hamas, he started moderating his position and trying to get along. So they assassinated him because they don't want a partner for peace. We're going to talk more about that. They murdered him because he was mellowing out. And that was in March of 2004. Was just like a week later was the giant riot in Fallujah. Maybe it was 2 weeks later was the giant riot in Fallujah where the Blackwater guards were lynched and their bodies burned and hung hung on the bridge. And one of the corpses was dragged through this street with another guy tied to the hood of a car with a big picture of Sheikh Yassin in the window. And it was the Israeli assassination of the founder of Hamas that had helped to touch off that riot that killed those Blackwater guards, that then led to Bush, and maybe this is what Mattis was referring to. This led to Bush ordering James Mattis to go in there and clean them out. And what they did was like a free fire zone. If you're a civilian, leave the city. If you don't leave the city, your life is forfeit, right? Like Vietnam. And they didn't do that in the other battles in Iraq War II, but they did that in Fallujah. And the first big battle of Fallujah in March of 2004 is what really kicked off the Sunni-based insurgency that killed 4,000 of our guys in Iraq War II. And it was because Israel assassinated their own former sock puppet when he was becoming a public relations liability for them.
I wanted to point out when it came to Biden and the leaked photo, Telegraph reports that it was a hostage rescue unit in Israel.
Yeah, that's what I had thought. Is that
I don't. You guys heard something different, or?
I think it was a security detail. If it's Delta, they don't like to talk about what they're actually doing.
Well, that was the scandal. The scandal was they leaked the information on accident.
Yeah,
they weren't supposed to post
on their
the photo.
Instagram. Yeah,
and that's why they deleted it.
Delta is top tier special operations forces. When they get killed, they don't report their casualties. Right? These guys are clandestine forces, top tier guys.
Yep.
Right above the special forces.
Yeah.
And so, but if they're there in Israel, I think
I don't know if they're gonna put him into Israel. And this is only like hearsay stuff that I've got, but it's my understanding that they're probably going to be going into the bases because there's a base in the desert in Iraq that they forward operate from so they can get into Syria and stuff. So if I understand correctly, they're going to be in that area. I don't know that they won't put them in support roles for the IDF. I think that more than likely, if there's a support force, it'd be the 2 Marine Expeditionary units that are in the area that are on carriers. Delta doesn't have enough guys where they'd be a big support role. They're usually because there's only a few hundred of them. There's maybe like 500 Delta.
Well, the Post said that they have generals embedded with the Israeli military helping advise.
That could be.
So I'm not sure which service. Advising is sure, like we can have an argument, like why are we involved? But actual warriors, actual fighters down there, that's disconcerting. And I would also be very concerned about the kind of person that gleefully smiles with excitement at meeting Joe Biden.
Yeah, seriously.
No, but for real, I mean, look, if you talk to the average American, they don't like Joe Biden.
No.
You'll find your average Democrat who despises Donald Trump with the most extreme Trump derangement syndrome does not like Joe Biden. But they'll still vote for him. And that I get. That's fine. My point is they don't meet Joe Biden and go, yeah, fist bump, high five, like, it's so great to meet you. And I look at this photo of these guys shaking Biden's hand and I'm like, I am worried about.
Although,
he's the boss.
They're military and he's the president.
Yeah.
That's basically all.
But that's my
really
point.
going
That's
on
my
there.
point.
It's
his approval rating is down 11 points among Democrats right now.
But this is my point. The idea that there are people who are like, I'm excited to meet him. He's the boss. Hoorah. And it's just like, dude, Biden's an evil guy. Yeah. Like, you should be like, you should be ashamed that he is the one giving orders.
Agree.
But I think perhaps for a lot of these guys that are doing the top tier stuff, they don't think Joe Biden's the boss.
I mean, the dude, those, like, just because the picture they were smiling, like, I think it's likely that they were putting a face on because you don't spit in the face of the president.
I would be magnanimous if I met the president. I would say that I would be kind and smile as well.
My bigger concern is the excitement to meet him and get a photo op and do all these things instead of being like, look, I get he's the president. I'll be respectful. There's a difference.
Yeah. I'm fairly confident. I can't say for sure, but I'm fairly confident that they were getting ribbed later on. The dudes were like really, because there's people that I know that are like not in the military that also know dudes that are like that, and they're just like, yeah, those they weren't.
Well, look, I want to go back to what you're saying about like, how could any of them have faith in him as their commander in chief? Remember in 2013, Barack Obama tried to take us to war in Syria over the first fake sarin attack, and essentially the American military and any potential volunteers were like, no, we're not following Barack Obama into battle. That's our commander in chief. Forget it. Well, look, if Barack Obama was JFK, then Joe Biden's LBJ. Who has faith in him? Like no one. You're going to sign your son up for the service when Joe Biden's the one calling the shots? I mean, if you're already on the Delta team, I guess you might not quit. But who wants to send their son to join the service right now?
Let's go back in time. So we have this period under Barack Obama. Oh boy, did I fall for that one. In 2008, I had all my friends being like, he's going to end these wars, man. We all hate the wars. We all hate what George W. Bush was doing. And I was like, all right, whatever. I guess I'll vote for the guy. And then Barack Obama gets in and like day 3, he's like, I'm going to blow some kids up. Got to blow them up. Too many of them. And then I remember one of the first.
Too many of them.
That's Seamus' joke. Seamus, shout out Seamus Coughlin. Got to blow them up. Too many. And when it's like day 3 of his presidency.
In Pakistan.
Yeah, it was like 23 women and children were killed in a village in an airstrike or whatever, and I was just like,
that was the wedding, right? Wasn't it a wedding?
Well, it's been a long time.
So. There were a lot of weddings. I don't think that particular one was.
But that one sticks with me. Pakistan, civilians killed, and I said, whoa, hold on. He's there now. Obama was supposed to say no, and then, oh boy, did I learn quick. How old was I? 2008, and I was just like, well, that was fun. I'm out.
Well, in that election, I remember because I was in New York doing like indie art projects, and everyone was very on board with Obama. And I remember telling them like he promised that he was going to send more troops to Afghanistan, and they were like, no, he didn't. And I was like, no, he totally said he was going to send more guys to Afghanistan, which I can't vote for him because of that, because he's, my goal is to vote anti-war. And they were like, well, he's not going to do that. And then, of course, he did that. these were also the same people who, when he put the Obamacare into place that had a mandate, and if you didn't sign up for health insurance, you would get taxed extra. They were like, that's great. And then when they got taxed extra, they were like, why me?
Seriously. Partisanship is the mind killer. It's the worst. And you're right. He avowedly said he was going to escalate the Afghan war. Although,
Yes.
And I write about this. I got a chapter 2 on this in Fool's Errand. What he really said, he wanted to send a couple brigades, which was mostly just like a PR thing, that he was saying Afghanistan is the good war, Iraq is the bad war, whatever. Then as soon as he got into power, they just absolutely rolled him. And it was the Secretary of Defense, the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Generals Petraeus and McChrystal, in alliance with McCain and Graham in the Senate. And they spent 9 months pressuring him to escalate that war by 70,000 troops, which eventually he did.
Yep.
And Lindsey Graham promised him, he said, give us a number. This is after he already sent 40. Graham said, give us being him and McCain, give us a number that starts with a 3 and we'll leave you alone, meaning 30,000 something more troops. And Obama made the deal. So here was his calculation, right? I'm going to triple a war that I know I can't win. Now, I know that I'm going to get thousands of American soldiers shot and blown up and killed. I know I'm going to get tens or hundreds of thousands of Afghans killed, but it's going to keep John McCain off my back. We made a deal. And that was what he did. And so he escalated the war and then he lost it anyway.
Lindsey Graham is vile, evil. You saw what he just said recently, right?
Yeah.
With or without evidence, it's time to start bombing Iranian targets.
Yep.
He wants to go to war with Iran so bad, and I know that there are still like holdovers in the government that still think it's a good idea. I don't think that there's anyone in America that thinks it's a good idea. No regular people in America that think it's a good idea to engage in a war with Iran.
Right. Look, in 2007, Dick Cheney and George Bush wanted to.
Yep.
They were escalating the war. They launched the Iraq War surge. And then they even dropped the lies about the nuclear weapons program for a minute to focus on the lies that they claimed. And people should check this. It's not true. And I wrote it all up in enough already. They claimed that Iran was responsible for every roadside bomb that went off in Shiite parts of Iraq. That's just not true. They were all being made in Iraq by Iraqis. But that was the propaganda, and that was supposed to be the excuse for the war. And then what happened was the Joint Chiefs brought George W. Bush to the Pentagon. And I believe this is in January or February of 2007. And they went to the tank, like the secure room in the basement or whatever. And they told W. Bush, we're not going to Iran. Like maybe the Air Force and the Navy talk tough with their air power, but the Army and the Marines, who are already getting chewed up in Iraq and Afghanistan, and the Special Operations Forces, they will die by the thousands and thousands and maybe tens of thousands in a war, because you have to send in, to take out the anti-aircraft, you have to send in Special Operations Forces with laser designators to take out the anti-aircraft. And you sure can't win a war or get a real regime change from the air. All you could do is some kind of crazy punitive strike anyway.
Right.
And as they put it,
You
they
need
said,
guys with guns.
They said, that's right. We do not have strategic, I forgot the word for it. What was it? The strategic dominant, that's not the term for it. I'm sorry. I believe it was, I'm sorry. Anyway, the point was the Pentagon, they want to be able to, escalation dominance, pardon me. This was the term I'm looking for. We don't want to fight unless we have escalation dominance, meaning we control every stage of the war. So when we do this, they'll do that, but don't worry because then we'll do this. And then they'll do that, but we have that covered. And they said, but in the case of Iran, we do not have escalation dominance. In the case of Iran, if we attack Iran, they have tens of thousands of missiles. Now, luckily, we don't have 100,000 troops in Iraq and Afghanistan anymore, but we got tens of thousands in Kuwait. We still do have thousands in Iraq, low thousands in Iraq. And we have the 5th Fleet Navy base at Bahrain, and we have CENTCOM headquarters at the Al Udeid base in Qatar. And our allies, the Saudis, Bahrain, UAE, have trillions of dollars worth of economic targets all up and down the western side of that Gulf. And if we go to war with Iran, every bit of that is up for grabs, including our Navy and Air Base there.
A geography lesson would wake a lot of Americans up very quickly. So you can pull this up. This is Google Maps. Figure it out. As soon as you look at the map, you go, now I get it. Iraq, Afghanistan. Two amazing coincidental countries for the U.S. setting up a bunch of military bases in. And Kuwait, where we have a bunch of troops. I wonder why that may be. And what do you think Iran is thinking, surrounded by U.S. military assets? This has been the plan for a long time. In fact, Cenk Uygur mentioned Wesley Clark. Was that his name?
Yes.
Scott?
Yeah.
Who talked about the 7 nations the U.S. wanted to invade, and Iran's one of them. Has the U.S. gone after all of them already, or which ones have
Almost.
not?
Okay.
Almost.
So, all right. So it's a great anecdote. People who aren't familiar, you ought to look this up. It's General Wesley Clark. He was the guy that did the Kosovo War for Bill Clinton. He was the Supreme Allied Commander of NATO in 1999. Almost got us all killed in World War III there. Ask me about that anecdote later. But anyway, and this gets right to the neocons and the Israel lobby in the United States. He went to the Pentagon right after September 11th, and an officer said, "General, come here, I want to show you something," and showed him this piece of paper. He said, "This is the plan for a regime change in the new war." He said, "We're going to war with Iraq." And Wesley Clark said, "Iraq? Why would we go to Iraq? They don't have anything to do with September 11th or Al-Qaeda, of course." And the guy said, "Yeah, no, check it out." So the list was, I hope I can get this right. The list was Iraq, Lebanon, by which they meant not necessarily everyone in Beirut, but Hezbollah in Lebanon, Syria, Libya, Somalia, and did I already say Sudan? And Iran, ending with Iran. Well, they did Iraq War II. They failed to do the regime change in Syria. They did Libya. They broke off the South from Sudan. And, there was a regime change there, although I don't know if there was America's sock puppets really that took over or not. But they certainly broke the country in half. And so the only one left is, and Hezbollah still stands. Yeah. And then is Iran. And so, look, this gets to all of Iraq War II. Let's talk about the clean break. Have you ever read the paper, A Clean Break? Or have you ever heard of that? Okay. So, David Wormser is an important neoconservative apparatchik. He was foreign policy advisor to Dick Cheney in the first W. Bush term. And in 1996, when Benjamin Netanyahu was brand new, the first time he was the prime minister of Israel, he came in 96. And David Wormser, Douglas Feith, and Richard Pearl wrote this study. And these are American neoconservatives. It's called A Clean Break, a new strategy for securing the realm. And they wrote it for Netanyahu. And what it says is this. It says, Iran, Syria, and Hezbollah are the threat to Israel, particularly Hezbollah in southern Lebanon, backed by Iran and Syria. And what we want to do is we want to break that chain. And then get this. They said to break that chain, what we want to do is we want to get rid of Saddam Hussein in Iraq. Huh? Saddam Hussein is the minority Sunni dictator sitting on a super majority Shiite population. And Iran and Hezbollah, of course, are these fundamentalist Shiite regimes. So why does it make sense to these neocons to get rid of Saddam Hussein? Well, it was this ridiculous Rube Goldberg scheme that they had come up with. If we get rid of Saddam Hussein...
Who's Rube Goldberg?
Oh, Rube Goldberg is the guy that makes the ridiculous, the mousetrap machine.
Okay,
where it's like 100 little gears turn to make... Yeah, Pee Wee Herman's breakfast, exactly.
Perpetual motion machine.
That's exactly right.
Pee Wee Herman's breakfast.
There's
probably a lot of young people, some Gen Z people like, what?
Yeah, y'all get the Pee Wee's Big Adventure off the Pirate Bay tonight. It's a classic.
It's a great movie.
I think it's probably on Netflix.
Must be. But look, so here was the scheme, okay? The Rube Goldberg scheme was, if we get rid of Saddam Hussein, then we will get the cousin of the king of Jordan to take over Iraq. And because he's a Hashemite with the blood of the prophet in his veins, all the Shiites will just bend over and kiss his bottom and do whatever he says. Which this is completely crazy. The Shiites don't revere the Hashemites at all. The Hashemites are Sunnis. And even though the Shiites revere the bloodline of the prophet, it's not like they're priests. And even priests and cardinals and bishops don't have like political control over their people directly. So in other words, they were living in this fantasy world that the Shiites of Iraq would become compliant under the new pro-American installed and pro-Israeli installed regime. And then because Shiite Islam is born in Iraq and then spread into Iran, they would get the Shiite clergy in Najaf to order Hezbollah to stop being friends with Iran and start being friends with Israel. And Iraq, under these compliant Shiites, would then give the full advantage to America, Jordan, Turkey, and Israel, our friends in the region, against Iran. Well, Tim, this is the dumbest damn thing. This makes no sense at all. And people can read. It's called A Clean Break by Wormser. The follow-up is called Coping with Crumbling States. And if you really want to know, they wrote a book about it called Tyranny's Ally. And then what really happened in Iraq War II? What happened in Iraq War II was Bush overthrew the minority Sunni dictator, and he put the supermajority Shiite population in charge and their political factions, who happened to be guys who'd been living in Iran for 30 years, since Jimmy Carter had hired Saddam Hussein to invade Iran back after the revolution. And so they were the ones who came and inherited the whole thing. So when we think about Iraq War II of the George W. Bush years, that whole 5-year civil war that was going on, that was Bush fighting for Iran's side in the war against his own friends, because that was what the neoconservatives thought would be good for Israel.
I saw this post on Twitter. They were talking about how Biden's approval collapsed after the Afghan withdrawal. And instead of making the point that Joe Biden botched the withdrawal, and Ian goes off, calling it a surrender. I mean, it seems on purpose. They said it was a bad play by Trump and Biden shouldn't have followed through. Instead of, it was the right play by Trump and Biden intentionally, in my opinion, flubbed the whole thing.
Everything.
But this is the point. This is what the reason why I'll say intentionally now, in my opinion, is that at the time we were asking, did Biden screw this up on purpose to sour the idea of withdrawal in the minds of the American public? The reality was you could withdraw from Afghanistan without causing what Biden caused. But now what I'm seeing is journalists say Trump's plan was bad and Biden is getting blamed for it.
Well,
no, Biden's plan was bad.
Trump put the plan in place way earlier in the spring.
That's
he had
right.
made that promise. And there were plenty of opportunities to get started on that withdrawal. And what happened was, I hear what you're saying. The Biden administration refused to get started on the withdrawal. And so they had to do it the last minute.
It's not just that. It's they abandoned Bagram in the middle of the night without telling the Afghani security forces. Mm-hmm. They left all.
I think they turned it over to the ANA, but the ANA couldn't hold it.
We lost 13
in the middle
people.
of the night. Yeah. The U.S. forces pulled out without notice, and regular Afghanis just looted the buildings, and there were helicopter pilots. I think this is like New York Times reporting that instantly lost logistics and didn't know what was going on, landed the helicopters and ran away. Yeah. Because they were like, there's no one anymore. No, I'm not talking. It was an insane move. And I think what they wanted, yes, Joe Biden gets the negativity from it, but they don't think I do not see Joe Biden being the candidate in 2024. It makes literally no sense. He's their sacrificial lamb, their scapegoat. Now, what they're going to do, and they're starting to do it, is saying, you see what happens when we withdraw? It's chaos, American side. We have to stay and keep the troops overseas.
Everything.
Go ahead.
Everything that was bad about the withdrawal from Afghanistan was all tactics. It was none of it was policy.
I disagree.
It was insane how they left all of the weapons. But now what we have is the Taliban saying, if you give me safe passage, we'll destroy Israel for you.
Well, they're not getting anywhere near Israel. Check the map again. Put the map up.
I'm just saying that is the goal of the Taliban. Is to
now here's the thing,
Israel.
though. So look, you make a great point about the narrative here about, see what happens when you ever leave anywhere, something bad happens, right? You're right. I don't believe that was the reason that they did what they did, though, and I can explain why. Here's what they did. Okay, Trump, as she said, absolutely correctly, Libby said, Trump's deal was we leave by May 1st. We're out by May the 1st. Okay, that's the start of the fighting season, right? Everything's frozen over until the summertime essentially comes. That's the start of the fighting season. We were supposed to be gone by then. Biden came in and said, well, I don't want to live up to Trump's deal. I want it to be my Afghan withdrawal, not Trump's Afghan withdrawal. And I don't want people to be able to say that I did what Trump said I had to do and this and that. Mm-hmm. So what did he do? He kicked the can down the road for 4 months to September, which remember they said, we're going to do it September 11th. Like, what do they do? Just public relations.
And
people
you had
are crazy.
in Afghanistan, they were like, you kind of promised.
Right. But here's the deal that you guys need to understand about the war, okay? The war was lost. They had to leave, okay? Bush and Obama lost that war before Trump ever got there. The Taliban were ascendant. They controlled 60% of the country in the daytime. They controlled 80 or more percent of it at night.
Part of it was they didn't know what a wind looks like. They didn't know what a wind would look like.
The policy was wrong.
Look, let's just stick with the withdrawal here for a second. If Biden was going to tell the truth to the American people about that war, he would have had to tell them, listen, we lost. The government that we built has no popular support. It cannot stand. The military that we built has no popular support. It cannot stand. We failed. We're leaving. But he couldn't do that, right? He had to say, what did he say? He said, we won the war. It was great. We built a great government in Kabul, which will surely last for years. And we built this great, magnificent Afghan National Army, 300,000 men strong. And it's sure to last for years too. That's why we can leave. Not because we blew it, but because we did it, everybody. And so now we can go. Well, by sticking to that lie, that meant they had to leave all those weapons in the hands of the Afghan National Army that couldn't hold on to them and ended up turning them all over to the Taliban. And because they had to pretend that they had created a government worth its salt in Kabul, they couldn't abandon it and leave the city early, or they would have been accused of undermining the government and being the reason that it fell. So they had to stick with their lie that everything is fine. Meanwhile, the Taliban are walking right into Kabul because it's 4 months behind schedule that they're leaving.
And you know what else comes from this? With the Taliban getting access to a lot of these weapons, certainly they can't maintain a lot of it, so a lot of it just instantly falls
Shelf
apart.
life, yeah.
But with a lot of the guns and the materials that are available to just ground forces, it allows the U.S. to have a recurring problem and reason to be in the Middle East.
It's also, they are also...
hard to get back to Afghanistan.
Yeah, I mean,
but it's not even necessarily about Afghanistan.
Been...
It's the reporting that, or the rumors at least, that weapons left behind by the U.S. are being used by Hamas and other Iran-backed
that was
militants.
reporting from the Wall Street Journal. They were reporting
Right.
about that in June, that was likely to be happening. And there's also reports that the technology has been reverse engineered. And like that they're able to build.
We saw that video of them trying to fly a helicopter and they're like going in circles or whatever.
When it comes to
they can make AK-47.
Yeah, when it comes to the small arms, they're building AK-47s and they're building at least small arms in the mountains of Afghanistan between Pakistan and Afghanistan. There's a whole arms market up there where you can go and buy copies of fully
like
automatic.
Louis Vuitton handbags, except AK-47.
Exactly.
Let me tell you a story, though. Here's how my first book, that was this book about all of the terror wars, became a different book, Fool's Errand, about Afghanistan. It's because I got stuck in Afghanistan because it's such a huge story. It's 20 years long, but the whole thing takes place east of Persia. And so I knew people are going to be mad at me that it takes too long before we get to Iraq War II. So I ended up, you know what? Fine. I'll just do a whole book about Afghanistan and I'll get back to the rest of the Middle East later. Because the rest of the whole story of the Bush and Obama years takes place in Mesopotamia and the Levant. What's going on in Afghanistan is, I hate to say it, but almost irrelevant in a sense. It's separate from the rest of the story. Whereas the war in Iraq immediately bleeds to Libya, to Syria, and the rest of the story comes from Bush Jr.'s invasion of Iraq War II in 2003.
Do you think religion plays a role in high-level military? I'm trying to be careful here. Obviously, religion plays a role to varying degrees, but do you think that actual revelatory religious fanaticism is a component?
In the Air Force more than other places, but yes, I do. I think
in the Air Force?
Yes. There's a guy named Mikey Weinstein who's sued about this over and over and over again about religious freedom inside the services, and it's particularly the Air Force has been taken over. At least my dad is 10 years old here, but from what I'd heard before, real holy rollers who believe that, nuclear war will help force Jesus to come back and all this kind of stuff. And there are people who really believe that with power and influence in this country.
And it's tough because I think Occam's razor is always, there's money to be made for the military-industrial complex. There's power to be had. There's grudges. There's generational conflict. But I bring this up because there are people pushing this rumor. And I think Cenk kind of took it the wrong way when I said that there's videos of people claiming, Israel is the blessed Holy Land, members of Congress saying this, and many people who believe that there has to be this war for there to be the Messianic era or whatever. I'm not talking about any of these anti-Semitic conspiracy theories about world control or dominance. I'm talking about people who generally just believe the Bible.
Sure.
And the Bible says that there'll be this great war. There's been people have been taught. There's Forward. I think it was Forward.com wrote about the red heifer that was born. I'm not saying I believe any of that is true. I'm wondering to what degree does a lot of people are very deeply religious. I'm wondering to what degree that influences their actions.
I think it has. I guess I would say in the councils of the highest levels of the Pentagon and the White House, I don't think that they have that much influence. But in the nation, in the country overall, they do. And in the Republican Party and in the Congress, they absolutely do. I mean, look, after September 11th, Colin Powell told George Bush, just like James Baker told his father, your approval rating is through the roof. We have to do a Palestinian state now. Now is the time. This is one of the main causes of terrorism against our country is the Israelis' oppression of the Palestinians. And Bush was convinced, and they started to do it.
Wow.
And then what happened was Tom DeLay, the House Majority Whip from Texas, came to W. Bush and said, you want to be a one-term president like your father? Because I'll turn every born-again evangelical Christian in this country against you, and you will be toast.
Why do you think the Palestinians have for so long, even going back to the founding of Israel, rejected a two-state solution? Even the one Bill Clinton proposed, I think in 92, that was really generous and pretty strong and would have given them a lot.
We're skipping around a lot here.
Sure, but I'm just asking your opinion on that.
Okay, I mean, if you want to go back to the beginning of it, it was because 11% of the population were claiming to own half the land, more than half the land, and everyone else was going to have to get the hell out of the way.
What about all
violently?
There've been so many.
Violently massacring them and cleansing them from their homes, and so they said no. But then what happened? I mean, first of all, well, there's a lot of first of alls here, but what happened was Israel made a secret deal with the king of Jordan that he would keep the West Bank. And then at the end of the war, they had Egypt keep the Gaza Strip just so that the Palestinians could not have their state. So quite contrary to this myth that Israel has done nothing but try to give the Palestinians independence all this time.
I'm talking about the American proposals. There's been a lot of American proposals.
Well, that was in 92, but you asked about 48.
Right.
First.
I'm saying, why have they rejected it all along? Like you're saying it's a different reason each time.
Well, I mean, to skip from 48 to 92 is tough. And there's obviously a lot at issue here. If you want to do, let me do the narrative in the broad stroke then, okay? So picture your map of Israel and Palestine that you have in your head right now. In the 1948 war, I mean, forget morality and normative, just descriptive, okay? Israel won the war, and they cleansed 750,000 Palestinians out of what we now call Israel proper within the 67 borders. Okay. And they pushed them into other nations across the Middle East, and they pushed them into the Gaza Strip and the West Bank. And they took as far as West Jerusalem. Okay. Now, regardless of who you sympathize with or whatever, just factually speaking, that was sustainable. What they created was sustainable in the sense that they created an 80-20 super duper majority Jewish democracy. You had 80% Jews, 20% Palestinian Muslims and Christians inside Israel. We're talking about now, not the occupied territories.
And this is after the 6-Day War?
This is after the...
Wasn't that 67?
I'm talking before 67.
Oh, I thought you were talking about 67. Okay.
Oh, yeah. No, so 67's next, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So before 67, they had created essentially this 80-20 super duper majority Jewish democracy. Then in the 67 war, which was started by Israel, they claimed it was preemptive. Regardless, Israel won the war. The Palestinians, of course, had nothing to do with it. They were just stuck in the middle. But Israel beat Jordan and Egypt and Syria in that war. And they took the Gaza Strip and the West Bank. Mm-hmm. And you could say, guys, that, look, they really de facto annexed all of Gaza and the West Bank then.
Yeah, and Egypt was pissed, for sure.
But they kept all the people. So unlike in 1948, where they drove all the people off their land and created this 80-20 super duper majority Jewish state,
they let everyone stay in their homes.
Well, they couldn't force them all out. They actually did force 235,000 people out of their homes, more out of their homes. But they still, overall, they kept the people of the West Bank. So they're essentially kidnapped now, right? So they were conquered
Were they kidnapped or they were let to stay where they lived?
Well, it's sort of the same thing in a sense. I mean, it's a turn of phrase here that I'm using, but what I'm trying to tell you is that Palestine, the Palestinian people have had nothing like independence this whole time. They've been under the occupation of Israel, first under Jordan and Egypt, and then under Israel since 1967. Okay, so when like Ben Shapiro, for example, or my friend here last night on Twitter says, well, what would we do if the Mexicans were attacking us across our international border here?
Cartels.
Well, even then.
We'd do nothing because we are being attacked.
Yeah, not with rockets.
By cartels, and we do nothing.
So
we let 7 million
open the border
people
for
in.
them.
We kiss them on the cheeks.
What? Well,
we give them Xboxes and tents. We let them populate Central Park.
All right, let's do the southern border in a minute. But so unlike in the Ben Shapiro analogy, which everybody's heard a million times, there is no international border here. See, most people, I'm not saying in this room, but I just mean in America, generally speaking, if you say the Israelis and the Palestinians, well, it sounds like the Palestinians already have a country because everybody has a country. And you just called them Palestinians, so they must be from the country called Palestine, right? Except, no, you got a bug right behind you on your chair there, buddy.
Oh, yeah, those little stink bugs, they do their thing.
Yeah, little guy.
He is actually cute.
Friendly little guy.
He was over here for a while.
So what happened was,
Blasted him. He's alive, though. I just blew him off with the...
So since 1967, they've been under occupation. Now, David Ben-Gurion, the first prime minister, said, this is crazy. We shouldn't do this. We should let them go right now. We don't want to essentially, in a way, again, accept my turn of phrase, import by expanding their territory. They're, in a sense, importing this massive population of Palestinian Muslims and Christians that they don't want. And so David Ben-Gurion...
Jordan doesn't want them. Egypt doesn't want them. No one wants them.
Well, and that's partially because if the Israeli Jews are able to cleanse all of historic Palestine of all their Muslim population, then they lose all their claim to their holy sites. It's their land that they want to keep. They were the ones who were there first. They're the ones being cleansed from their land by the Israelis. Well, first means they were living there all along.
But
for generations back into antiquity, when a bunch of Russians and Lithuanians and Germans and New Yorkers showed up and said the land belonged to them.
Antiquity?
And ancient times. In fact, here, I'm glad this has come up because I got a great quote for you here. I've been talking about this lately, but I had forgotten what the actual source was.
But what you're saying...
But the actual source is David Ben-Gurion himself.
You're saying that...
Who said...
Muslims always had this land.
Had been there. That's right. Because here's why. Because when the Muslims came and took over that land, they did not cleanse the land of the people who lived there. And they did not invade it with a giant occupying force to replace them. All they did was take them over and tax them. And then the deal was, if you convert to Islam, you get a tax cut. Basically, you pay less. And so the local people all converted to Islam
by force,
essentially, by coercion, right?
Yeah, it's by sword.
And so, but so these are the same people who are the descendants of the ancient Hebrews, and the source for this is David Ben-Gurion himself. Okay, this is from Sheldon Richman's book, which we published at the Institute. And Sheldon, my good friend, was raised Jewish and Zionist until he learned all of this stuff. And he wrote this great book, Coming to Palestine, about it. And on page 11 and 12 here, he quotes David Ben-Gurion and his partner, Yitzhak Ben-Zvi, who is Israel's second president and who was also a professional historian. And they wrote a book in 1918 called Eretz Israel in the Past and in the Present. And in there, I won't read you the whole quote, but in there, they describe in detail, Ben-Gurion says, the ancient Hebrews never left. So you can't take a farmer from his soil. They were there the whole time. And so what was happening was the descendants of the ancient Hebrews who had stayed in Palestine were being replaced by the descendants of the ancient Hebrews who'd gone off to Europe, and then their descendants came home, as though there's no statute of limitations. And 3,000 years later, you can come and say, this is my land, you can't live here. But
if the argument is one people conquered another people, then all you're arguing now is another people are conquering other people. right? Like,
Well, that's right. But look,
I'm not okay with any of it, but I understand it happened, and I wonder what the solutions would be.
Well,
we're trying
right,
to
so-
minimize casualties.
Look, I mean, all we're trying to do here is describe the reality of the situation, Tim. Most of the time, again, if you listen to Ben Shapiro, which many people do, you would think there already was some kind of two-state solution, and now the nation state of Palestine has sent its terrorist forces to attack and invade Israel, when that's not what happened. What happened was, essentially, Indians broke out of their reservation and attacked the people in town. And that's not a fight between sovereigns. That's a fight essentially between refugees in a prison camp versus the nation state that conquered them. And when you at least explain...
It's against the population because they did go after innocent people.
That's right. Of course they did. And let's talk about that in just a second. But just overall, just the situation of who's attacking who and the relative power. Like, if America went to war with Mexico, that wouldn't be a fair fight, but at least they have a national government and a national army. That's different.
That would be a fair fight, for sure.
That's different than if we just start carpet bombing the Navajo reservation out in Arizona. I mean, imagine some Indians in the reservation out west go into town and massacre 1,000 Anglos. Do we carpet bomb the reservation? Or we find the people who are responsible and their commanders who sent them?
If the Navajo massacred 1,000 Americans off the reservation?
Yeah.
It'd be federally occupied.
What would we do?
They'd wipe out the reservation.
No,
Yeah.
we would not either. No, we would not.
We sure would.
No, we would.
Yeah, we would.
No,
It would be occupied.
We would find the individuals responsible and the men who sent them, and we would hold them to account.
1,000 Americans?
They would be prosecuted in criminal court.
We killed a
and
million
sentenced to
people
death.
in Iraq because of September 11th.
We massacred everybody at Waco and Ruby Ridge for far less.
Well, this is not an endorsement of it.
And look, they killed a hell of a lot of Indians at Wounded Knee too, and second Wounded Knee. However, okay,
Let me
Indians-
rephrase
massacred a lot
it.
of settlers, too.
Would you support carpet bombing an Indian reservation over an atrocity when you know good and damned well that the FBI and the Marshal Service can handle this?
No.
You're going to send in the military and you're going to kill innocent people.
If you're saying that the Navajo Nation, which struggles to have electricity and refrigeration just to afford,
like the people of Gaza?
No, like the people of the Navajo Nation, the Navajo Hopi Reservation, right? Like there's solar panel structures to keep refrigerators going to make sure that they have insulin, the insulin stays cold. If you're saying that these people, if there was a militia to the point where they had a militia and they decided to murder 1,000 Americans, I think that would, first of all, that would be really shocking. And I would think very long and hard about the structure of the,
Well, that's a great point. You would wonder what they were so upset about.
The Department of the Interior. No, I wouldn't worry what they were upset about, but I would.
Well, maybe Hillary Clinton sold their uranium to the Russians and they all got cancer and they're actually upset and got something to fight about.
Let me answer. Okay, let me literally answer the question instead of just going back and forth. If the Navajo Nation mounted a raid that killed 1,000 Americans, it's not some arbitrary question of carpet bombing them. It's a question of military capabilities, what we expect in terms of future actions against us, and what amounts to justice. I would be quite concerned with the carpet bomb on the Navajo reservation because they don't have support from Iran, or they don't have access to rockets. They're not produced. We're not being bombed by them consistently. Rockets aren't launching out of various areas. We don't need to do that. Yes, the Marshals and U.S. forces could go in there.
Yeah, but even if they were armed with rockets, I mean, look, we call them rockets because you don't dare call them missiles because they're not real missiles and they didn't get shipped from Iran. They made them out of water pipes, right? These are, barely amount to Katyusha rockets. The reason it's so important that we talk about the difference between, whether we're talking about a sovereign nation or an Indian reservation, what you're supposed to take from that is everybody in this country knows that the great white father back east, Joe Biden, and his armed forces have 1 billion times the strength and the power of any Indians on any reservation, and that if they did break out and commit some terrible atrocity, that Uncle Sam ought to be able to negotiate a peaceful solution from here. And again, the individuals responsible would be prosecuted in court. It wouldn't be a war. They would go to court and then they'd be hanged.
Michael Reinl.
And
was he given his day in court?
Who's that?
The guy who shot Aaron Danielson in Portland.
I don't
in
know. I mean, the
2020
Branch
in the
Davidians didn't get their day in court either, but they should have.
Should have.
They should have.
I do not expect the U.S. government to be honest and bear integrity when dealing with these things. Did people of Iraq get a fair trial after 9/11? The U.S. just decided to lie, to wage war overseas, which resulted in untold deaths, and we're still pissed off about it. It was an insane move that we went to Afghanistan and Iraq over 9/11. 9/11 was an atrocity that this country and for this country. Everybody knows that, and 3,000 people lost their lives. The stories that come out of 9/11 are they're stories of great heroism, which inspire. But the whole day was just so horrifying, and the reaction was just untold more dead with lies. The U.S. did not have a fair day in court. I fully expect evil actions. Should something like that occur? I wish it was.
Yeah, but dude, you're talking about a bunch of Egyptians and Saudi nationals who hijacked planes working for a foreign terrorist group.
Right.
In my
we went
analogy,
to war in two countries.
No, we're talking about Indians on the reservation because we're talking about Israel and the Palestinians. That's not the same as Al-Qaeda attacking us on an international jihad. We're talking about, look, the point about bringing up the Navajo is not to impugn the Navajo. It's to point out that they are already licked. They're already beaten. They live in a concentration camp under the total control of the United States government.
But they can leave. Hold on.
Look, it's not a perfect analogy, but I'm just saying the relative power versus the Indians on the res versus the U.S. federal government means if something very terrible happens, the onus should be on the American national authorities to resolve it peacefully from there, not to call in the army to wipe out a bunch of innocent men, women, and children. And look at the history of Israel and Palestine here, where they've had problems with terrorism from the leftists, from the nationalists, from the Islamists, the whole time. And how do they handle it? They went in, they get them one at a time. It's only since Netanyahu that they do these massive bombing campaigns. You can go in, again, we're talking about a reservation. You can go in and pick these guys off one at a time.
So you think the response from the Hamas attack would be for Israel to do like strategic incursion with forces to remove Hamas?
Yes, they should listen
to what AOC said.
They should. I don't care about that. Listen, what you just said was that America got all emotional and did a bunch of stupid, wrong things after September 11th. Israel ought to listen to you, and they ought to not do that. They ought to be smart. And look, I wrote an article a couple of weeks ago, and we do need to get into why Netanyahu likes Hamas so much and supported them in Palestine, because that's a huge part of this, okay? Yeah. Because we keep getting distracted off our points, and probably that's mostly my fault. But and hell, now I forgot what I was going to say about that.
We're talking about you were leading to the comment, the link you sent, which is something that I was.
Oh, the reaction.
The reaction.
Yes, the reaction. Okay, so
Saul Alinsky stuff.
So look, okay, yes, you guys are familiar with Saul Alinsky, the leftist radical community organizer guy, right? Okay, page 74 of Rules for Radicals says that in all asymmetric political action, the action is in the reaction of the opposition.
Yeah.
Right. So like bin Laden has a group of 400 bandits. He's trying to take on the superpower. How do you do it? You get the superpower to kill itself.
Right.
Right. You give them an opportunity to go wild and do something self-destructive. Okay. In this case, Hamas was trying, and probably there are people who are siding with the Palestinians who might not want to hear this part of it. The reason that Hamas committed the atrocity that they committed on October the 7th. Yes, on October the 7th, which, by the way, an extended family member of mine was abducted and murdered by Hamas in that atrocity.
Condolences.
Okay. And by the way, my wife almost would have died on September 11th, except she was homesick at her parents' house, but she had an office in the tower and would have been killed on September 11th. Okay, so I don't have any love or sympathy for these armed Islamist murderers. That's exactly what they are. Okay, but they're not just devils, and they're not just angry children. And Muhammad didn't come from hell to give them instructions to do a bad thing. These are human men, and they're fighting about politics.
So why'd they do it?
So why they did it was to provoke Netanyahu into doing exactly what he's doing now. Carpet bombing the Gaza Strip, slaughtering Gazan Palestinian civilians by the thousands.
So Hamas knew that this would result in a massacre of their own people.
That's exactly
right. So they wanted a massacre of their own people.
That's right.
Wait.
Let me finish now.
Real quick, one point. for your question, of course Hamas knew.
Right. Of
Now,
course they did.
motivations aside, there's no other reaction. But
Not
continue.
just they knew, not just that, not just they knew. This is what they wanted to happen. Okay?
Absolutely.
Because with the reaction, then comes all the counter reactions, right? So how we start the show at the top of the show today. America hits Iranian sites in Syria because they had sent drones after our guys in Syria because of what Israel is doing in Gaza, right? At the Lebanese border with Hezbollah, you got so far just pot shots going off back and forth, but that could quickly escalate. Wait. Now, every Shiite militia in Iraq has to take a stand. The Ayatollah in Tehran gets to get up there and beat his chest. Now, every Sunni king in Arabia, all of the American sock puppets, Mohammed bin Salman and Mohammed bin Zayed in Saudi and in UAE, they all have to take a stand. Are they going to be silent because they're good little sock puppets of the empire? Or are they going to agree with 100% of the public opinion of the people in their countries? This could destabilize the whole region. It's already. Remember when I was here a year and a half ago, we talked about the Abraham Accords.
Yep.
And what was the purpose of the Abraham Accords? This was the Netanyahu doctrine that said, we can, with enough American tax money, we can make peace. Well, not peace, but we can finally permanently normalize relations with Bahrain, with
It was UAE.
yes, Bahrain,
Saudi
UAE,
Arabia.
Saudi, Sudan, and Morocco.
That's right.
And we can do this without
Without
making
addressing the
peace with the
Palestinian situation.
Palestinians.
Right.
That's right. And so,
And that
in
made
fact,
the
just
Palestinians
before-
pissed off, and so
That's
they
right.
took a couple of years to plan this attack.
That's right.
Yep.
And then look what happened. They got the reaction that they wanted. And now that all
they
of the
knew that the
Abraham
US
Accords
wasn't
are in
gonna do
jeopardy.
anything.
Right. And look, and this is let's get real honest about this. Even if you absolutely love Israel, and I don't know any reason why not to. It's a land full of civilians. I love them just as much as everybody else. Okay? You would not wish Netanyahu on the people of Israel. He has been the longest serving prime minister in Israeli history, longer than David Ben-Gurion. Okay, they call him King Bibi. And so, think if September 11th had happened in Bill Clinton's third term. His approval rating would have gone down, right? Bush was off the hook because he'd only been on the job for 8 measly months before that attack happened on his watch, right? This is happening in Netanyahu's 5th term, okay? This is his policy finally come to fruition. It was called the Netanyahu Doctrine. And the Netanyahu Doctrine said, unlike Yitzhak Rabin, who one of his fans assassinated in 1995, unlike Yitzhak Rabin, who said, we want to demonize Iran so that we can negotiate and make peace with the Arabs, including the Palestinians. The Netanyahu Doctrine said, no, we'll make peace with demonize Iran, make peace with the Arabs, but not with the Palestinians. And you can hear him just 3 weeks ago in his United Nations address. He explains exactly the thinking behind this. He says, they always said that we could never normalize relations with the rest of the nations of the region, and therefore then have peace with the Palestinians unless we make peace with the Palestinians first and give up a Palestinian state first, and only then will we be able to get along. But we showed them, and we're so smart, and we made these deals without giving up a Palestinian state. And he said, but we will have peace. And what he's essentially saying between the lines is, we're going to have the peace of total victory here. The Palestinians will get nothing, and they'll learn to like it. They'll never have independence, and they'll never have freedom.
I got some trivia for you.
And then this happened 2 weeks after he said that. Or 1 week after he said that at the UN. Look at me, I got away with it, everybody.
I got
he
some-
said.
I got some
after
trivia
the
for you
Ayatollah
guys.
Khomeini called for.
I got some trivia for you.
Okay.
What does this mean?
That's peace. This is victory.
Right, but the origin of this sand sign is the same thing.
F you.
It's making the V for victory. And so what happens is after the battle, when they hold up the 2 fingers, we call it peace. Why? Because you killed all your enemies.
Yeah. The peace of desolation.
The peace has been achieved. We've won. And so when people are like, peace out, the origin of that is after your enemy was killed, you held up the V for victory.
I always thought that this was FU because the archers would hold up two
They'd be
fingers
like,
because
"Oh."
when they got caught, they would cut off one of the fingers so they couldn't pull the.
But it's a
that's
V for
where this
victory.
comes from.
Which people now say peace, but the peace is
It's peace
So
after you win.
Wait,
What
so
do you-
this brings us back to the clean break, okay? Because what was the purpose of getting rid of Saddam so that we can weaken Hezbollah? It was so that we don't have to abide by the Oslo Agreement and negotiate an independent Palestinian state. But if we screw over the Palestinians while we still have Hezbollah on our northern border, then that's an extra pressure. And so the whole point of the clean break strategy was we need to get America to go to war in Iraq for us so that we don't have to give justice to the Palestinians.
What do you make of?
I wanted to ask, when you mentioned Hamas knew this was going to happen, do you think they knew? I mean, you're outlining this story of dominoes falling over, which could lead to World War III. And the first thing I thought was, if you are Hamas in Gaza, you're thinking World War III is our only path to any kind of change.
Well, look, again, I think World War III is a little hyperbolic. I don't foresee Russia getting involved, although it could happen, something like that. We're already in a massive proxy war against Russia right now, as we all know, which is horrifying and terrifying. But they're not that close with the Ayatollah. You know, Russia and Iran, they have their own tensions going back, and they've been getting along okay. And Iran has been sending drones for the Russian war effort and that kind of thing. But they don't have like a treaty of alliance where Russia would go to war for Iran. And quite frankly, I think worst case scenario here, the war spreads to Lebanon and possibly Iraq. But I really think that the Americans and the Ayatollah's guys too have got to be cautioning him. And I think the American military has got to be telling Joe Biden how badly they do not want to fight Iran. You put that map up earlier there. The country's what, 3-4 times the size of Afghanistan? Afghanistan is the size of Texas, okay?
People don't understand this too. That's why I say a geography lesson.
And this is mountains too. Topography lesson counts too.
Yep.
This isn't flat desert like Iraq.
These are mountains.
You cannot win here, man.
Mountains, massive with massive air defense. The U.S. military doctrine is defined by its air superiority.
I really now I don't know how much I believe that there is a war with Iran coming, like whether cooler heads will prevail or not. But I strongly believe that if it does happen, the U.S. will justify using tactical nuclear weapons because they'll want to take out the oil reserves. They'll want to because that's what Lindsey Graham's after. Or they'll use Moabs as big as they possibly can. Exactly. If they don't want to get on, if they don't want to have.
What do you make of Iran having trained Hamas fighters?
Well, look, I mean, they have a real interest in disrupting the situation in Israel and Palestine. If you really want to...
I mean, Iran was training Hamas fighters before they were even Hamas, like back in the late 80s, when Hamas was essentially forming in Lebanon with Hezbollah.
So, well, no,
Hezbollah was
different.
training
That's
Hamas.
Different. Yeah, Hamas.
And so was
Hamas
the
is
Iranians.
part. Yeah, and they're part of the Muslim Brotherhood. And I want to recommend to you and to everyone listening a great book by Robert Dreyfuss called "Devil's Game: How the United States Helped Unleash Fundamentalist Islam."
So it's the U.S.'s fault that the extremist
Libby,
Islamists.
yes, because America inherited all of the European and the Japanese world empires after World War II. America is the dominant force in the Middle East, we're the middle part of North America.
We created the people that hate us now? Is that... I'm just trying to understand what you're saying.
Not created in the like oversimplified sense, but yes, the enemy in the Cold War was first the commies and second the nationalists. And who's opposed to both the commies and the nationalists? The Islamists. And so America and Britain and Saudi Arabia spent billions spreading fundamentalist Islam throughout the region. And not just the Wahhabism of Saudi, but the Muslim Brotherhood essentially was meant to disrupt all secular politics in the region for generations and did so. That was the purpose of it. And that was why America backed the Muslim Brotherhood. That was a huge part of the reason, of course, that America and Saudi worked together to send a bunch of guys, proto-Al-Qaeda guys, to fight the Soviets in Afghanistan in the 1980s, which is
You mean
where...
the Mujahideen, those
That's
guys?
right. Well,
Yeah.
because see, there was the Afghan Mujahideen, but then there was the Arab Afghan army. And these were mercenaries. Again, look at the map. All of these guys are Arabs. Then you have Persia. And then you have the Afghans, who are Hazaras and Tajiks and Uzbeks and Pashtuns, right? They're not Arabs at all. So they got all these Arabs to come and sent them to fight in Afghanistan, including the guys who were the leaders of what became Islamic Jihad and Al-Qaeda that ended up turning against the United States. So, and in fact, most people don't know this, but throughout the 1990s, when Al-Qaeda was already attacking the United States, Bill Clinton kept supporting them anyway. He supported them in Bosnia, and in Kosovo, and in Chechnya. And you might remember when Vladimir Putin declared war on Ukraine a year and a half ago, in his declaration of war, he said, and I like the way he did this too, because he knew it was going to sound like conspiracy stuff. So he phrased it like this. He goes, "Come on, let's be adults about this. We know what you and Britain were doing in Chechnya." Right? That was true. America was supporting bin Ladenite head choppers, suicide bomber, murderers
Bin
against
Laden
the
was
Russians.
hanging out in Brooklyn. I mean,
Well, and his men were essentially divided, right? There was this. They were motivated to attack the United States by one, our stationing of troops in Saudi Arabia, two, in order to bomb Iraq from 1990 all the way through. Okay, through the entire Clinton years, and then support for Israel in their occupations of Palestine and at that time of southern Lebanon, as well as support for all the dictatorships in the region. Well, so even though Bill Clinton was backing them in Kosovo and in Chechnya, they were still coming for us anyway. He was using them, but he wasn't buying their loyalty. And so I'm not like a 9/11 truther here saying the CIA had them attack us. That's not right. But what happened was they were too clever by half, just like Netanyahu. They think they're so smart. We're going to back these terrorists. And then I'll tell you, I got these great quotes for you guys. Okay, this one is from the American Pentagon in the years before September 11th. They said, "Terrorism is a small price to pay for being a superpower." Yeah. Okay. And what they were thinking was, come on, somebody sets off a truck bomb at an embassy in Africa or something. Who cares? We get to rule the world. Okay. Here's a quote just like that, Libby, that you can find from Benjamin Netanyahu addressing the leaders of his party, the Likud. And he's talking about anyone who wants to thwart the establishment of a Palestinian state has to support bolstering Hamas in Gaza.
Hey,
because they will never deal. But then he said, we control the height of the flame, right? It's that same imperial arrogance of the Bill Clinton years that we can use these people to keep things the way we want them, whether to fight our enemies or to divide and conquer our subject peoples. But then what are they going to do? Right? In fact, one more quote was from a female Israeli soldier who warned her superior officers that Hamas is training. They're obviously training hard. They're preparing something.
Guys, NBC.
And her boss, one sec. Her boss told her,
breaking news?
Yeah,
they're
there's breaking news, Scott.
Okay,
they're punks. They won't do anything.
What is
NBC Boston is reporting that the Lewiston, Maine shooter, Robert Card, has been located and is dead.
Oh, damn.
okay.
Where is he?
Well, good.
I don't know. I'm just looking at it right now. This is the man suspected in Wednesday's massacre that killed 18 people in Lewiston, Maine, has been found dead. Sources told NBC Boston investigators Friday night. Robert Card was the subject of a days-long manhunt that followed mass shootings at the just-in-time recreation bowling alley in Schmeggens Bar and Grill.
Schmeggies.
All right.
So
You're from New Hampshire. You should know how to pronounce things.
It's literally Schmeggens.
I know. It's very weird. It's Schmeggies.
Anyways, specific details are not available immediately, but the sources told NBC 10 Boston investigators that there is no longer a threat in Maine as Card has been located and is deceased. And that is literally just popped up like 5 minutes ago.
I just wanted to say, because we talk a lot about this deep history with the Middle East and U.S. involvement, and it kind of feels like a lot of the conversations I've had, I'm always just like, someone will make a bunch of points about, well, there's, Libby says these people hate us, and then you're talking about these operations, and I'm just like, would we not benefit from not being involved? Like, is it better for us?
Yes.
We just totally not be involved.
100%.
And so when I hear a lot of like moral arguments, well, like what they're doing this and they're doing this, and then, the Israel-Palestine stuff specifically, I'm kind of like, my response is, I'm America. I don't know why we're arguing with the morality of foreign nations that are in a generational conflict. Right. When we should be helping our people.
The answer is because America is the world empire, Tim, and this is a huge contradiction, right? This is the new world. Our ancestors came here so they could mind their own business and be free, and yet America came out on top at the end of the Second World War. The rest of the industrialized world was burnt to the ground, and so America had half the GDP of the planet, and then they took full advantage and they created a world empire. They justified it in the name of containing the Soviet Union. And then when the Soviet Union ceased to exist 30 years ago, what'd they do? Quit and go get a real job? No. They went and they expanded to the Middle East. They expanded into Eastern Europe. And they picked a fight with Al Qaeda, and they picked a fight with Russia, and now here we are. Same as they expanded. By the way, you guys are such China hawks on here, but who started the China pivot? That was Barack Hussein Obama and Hillary Clinton, who said now's time to pick a fight with China. That was their policy.
I just want to, my view, and it's probably naive, it's probably ignorant, whatever, but my view is a tremendous opportunity after the fall of the Soviet Union for trade agreements and not war.
Right.
To say, hey, you look at what's going on in Eastern Europe, and we keep hearing from the establishment press and from the neocon, neo-lib uniparty that it's an unprovoked invasion of Ukraine. And Russia, oh, come on. NATO expansion.
That's my book is called Provoked. It's about how they provoked it.
But at the very least, if you want to make the argument that, I was in Ukraine at the start of the protests, which eventually turned into the ousting of Yanukovych, and in the city, I talked to many random people. And what did I find? They were very pro EU. And when I talked to them, they say that what I was generally told by a lot of Ukrainians was, Russia wants to create this trade union. They want Ukraine to be a part of it. Many Ukrainians don't trust Russia, obviously, because Soviet Union wasn't even that long ago. So a lot of the older folks are really concerned. And entering the EU is a major economic lift up, and the Schengen zone, a lot of people want to move. And so that's where we're going. That is all geopolitical dispute and conflict, which results in escalated conflict. The idea that there's no provocation, what the media keeps saying, is just absurd. Right. As long as our military alliances are expanding in a region, there is cause for conflict.
Right. You're absolutely right. And look, this isn't just hindsight, okay? This is what all the paleo conservatives said 30 years ago. Pat Buchanan and, Scott McConnell and all the guys who were like the refugees from the George H.W. Bush Republican Party at that time. Ron Paul ran for president in 1988, saying we need to completely back out of the old world altogether. And was absolutely right. And what happened? H.W. Bush took full advantage. He lied to the Russians. He knew the plan was to expand NATO, and they lied to the Russians and made them believe that they wouldn't expand NATO just to get them out of the way.
You know what I love? You're obviously familiar.
They lied us into Iraq War I as well.
You're obviously familiar with the liberal economic order.
Sure.
So, Ian brings that up quite a bit. And we've pulled up the Council on Foreign Relations website outlining the liberal economic order and plainly stating, they said after World War II, the fears of expanded war and nuclear annihilation led to this idea of the liberal economic order, which is a soft way of saying American empire, military bases everywhere, the American world police, and it's an impossibility. Naturally, what you're doing is creating something that becomes the massive target. The U.S. never had the capability of suppressing the rise of any other economic power, though they try. Right. It doesn't happen. And now we're staring at the fourth turning, World War III, whatever you want to call it. And it's what my favorite part is, you get to the point where you get H.W. Bush saying, what was his quote? We can begin to see a new world order. Now, you get a bunch of people complaining about the idea of the new world order, which literally is a reference to an expansion upon the CFR, the liberal economic order, into a new version of it, which is American world police, etc. The media runs out full speed screaming the conspiracy theory of the new world order. And what I think happens is a lot of people fall victim to this. There's a legitimate concern over powerful interests internationally, corporate interests and their vassals in government, to create and maintain the liberal economic order and their new version of it. What happens then is the media, because these people are easily, they're stupid and they're evil for not every single one, but a lot of them, they will take the legitimate story of the liberal economic order, pull the most absurd claims off the internet, create this psychotic conspiracy theory, and then say anybody who's saying this believes the crazy conspiracy theory to try and discredit the idea that there are people who are actually calmly and rationally saying, you know, that thing you've been doing for a long time about trying to set up military bases everywhere to be a world police, I think it's a bad idea that's going to get us all killed. They say what he actually believes, that lizard people have set up a base in the Denver airport and he's insane. Don't listen to him.
Right. Look, you're right. And look, the New World Order, when H.W. Bush said it, what he meant was the era of the American empire and no one can oppose us now. As he put it, what we say goes. And when they say now, they call it the liberal rules-based international order. That's, again, it's the American empire. But the conspiracy theory is the opposite, actually. The conspiracy theory is that ultimately they're going to create a one world federal government under the UN that will then conquer the United States, and we'll have Chinese troops everywhere, and it'll be like Red Dawn, and we'll all be enslaved. And this is the thing which it's good for getting right-wingers interested in foreign policy and how dangerous all this stuff can be, because look, ultimately, you know, the John Birchers were the big pushers of the New World Order conspiracy. And the lesson that they were preaching basically was the only way to destroy America is to turn it into an overextended empire. Now, from their point of view, it was all deliberate. It was all treason to bring us down. But forget that. Just stick to the point. The only way to bring down America is to turn it into an overextended world empire. I mean, you could carpet bomb us with H-bombs, but then there's nothing to take over. Otherwise, the only way to do it is to drive our national debt up till the dollar breaks.
The Roman Empire.
Right? Which is what we're doing right now. So it doesn't have to be a conspiracy. It's bad policy. It's suicide.
A lot of people like to talk about the Roman Empire and what caused it to be ripped apart, and there are similarities there. History doesn't rhyme; doesn't repeat; it rhymes. And so a lot of people are drawing parallels to all these other historic events. And some people will be like, no, it's not like this one. It's like this one. It's not the Roman Empire. It's more like, you know, the Bolsheviks in Russia. And I'm like, guys, it's a little bit of all of them. Sure. And that's a big problem.
Yeah, it's us. Hey, look, so let's get back to talking about the Palestinians here for a second, because, you know, people use Hamas and Palestinians interchangeably here. Like, all these people are guilty of the things that Hamas did. But I mean, Tim, the reason I'm here right now is because I'm still not over Waco. Okay.
Oh, dude, I went there. I went there last year.
So
my dad's from there.
But like, if according to the logic of the people who want to bomb Gaza right now, I'm responsible for Waco because somehow I didn't prevent Bill Clinton from becoming president, and now it's okay to kill me and my family because of the things that Bill Clinton did. That was the logic that Osama bin Laden invoked in his letter to America in 2002. He said, you pay your taxes, you vote in elections, and boy, especially you Americans, always bragging and boasting about how self-governed you are.
There's more nuance than that.
So then he said he had the right to kill us, which was, in fact, he was parroting Bill Clinton and Madeleine Albright, who said that they had the right to kill innocent Iraqis in order to force them to rise up and overthrow Saddam Hussein. It's the same sick morality. We think the price is worth it, as Madeleine Albright said, to kill innocent people, to do what we want, to get what we want.
I suppose the big question then becomes, what do we do? Well, like that's why I brought up that maybe
we as Americans, we first and foremost, the United States should adopt an absolutely non-interventionist foreign policy.
100%.
100%. And that means telling the Israelis, you guys are on your own. And this goes back to a point that you raised, I think, before we went on the air.
What happens to Israel without the United States?
Israel would be fine without the United States. Israel would be better off without the United States. As you guys have noticed, everything America touches turns to fire. And I just didn't say a bad word. Almost did.
Did you just
would
say
be better off?
Israel?
Yes.
No, Israel would be better off without the U.S.?
Yes. Because, look, they're plenty well enough armed to take on any neighboring nation state, which they're friends with Jordan and friends with Egypt. They bomb Syria with impunity once or twice a month for a decade straight now. Hezbollah has enough of a force probably to keep them out. I mean, not in a full-scale war. In a full-scale war, Israel completely destroy them. But Hezbollah has no real offensive force that threatens Israel. So they're perfectly safe, right?
Hezbollah has, I thought Hezbollah has like rockets.
Who's perfectly safe?
Israel is perfectly safe. From foreign nation states, I'm saying now. Well, that was the question, right?
Right.
So
I'm just trying to clarify.
Yeah. So But by having America there, it's like being a banker on Wall Street and knowing that Alan Greenspan is going to bail you out, right? It's called a moral hazard in economics. They called it the Greenspan put, right? And what happens is if you're a banker and you know that the Fed is going to bail you out, then you can make all kinds of lousy loans and it doesn't matter because you're going to be made whole. It's the same for like a bratty little kid in the neighborhood who likes to be a bully and pick fights because he knows he has an older brother that's going to bail him out if he gets into a fight with somebody that he can't handle.
Jackson Hinkle.
Right? And so this is the same kind of situation with Israel. If America did not, well, look at just the current situation. If Joe Biden didn't sail aircraft carriers right in there and tell Hezbollah, you better not think about it, and tell the government in Iraq, you better keep your militias under control and all that, Israel would already have to scale back their ambition here, right?
So
By showing
Israel
up.
is perfectly safe, or Israel would have to scale back there. What do you mean?
Yes, I'm saying that the more violence that Israel commits, and over the decades, the more they refuse to deal in good faith with the people in the Gaza Strip and the West Bank, the Palestinian people, the worse situation that they're in. The fact, Libby, that we're having this conversation in 2023 means that Netanyahu's policy is a terrible failure. 100%. No different than if it had been Bill Clinton's third term on September 11th.
What should Israel do right now? And what should they have done on October 8th?
Well, on October 8th, I think they were still chasing the terrorists back into Gaza. But look, right now, they have the place completely surrounded. Okay? They've called up 300,000 reserves. This is essentially, I have an Israeli friend, again, an army veteran who fought in the 2006 war. He says this is like Waco right now. They're completely surrounded.
Who is? The Gaza?
Gaza.
Okay.
They're completely under siege. And yes, Hamas is bad, and yes, Koresh is bad, but there's also a bunch of innocent people in there. And so just wait them out. You got all the time in the world. There's no reason that you have to go in there like this. And you know, Daryl Cooper, are you guys familiar with Martyr Made, the podcast Martyr Made?
Of course.
This is my good friend Daryl Cooper. He's so smart about this.
We've had him on, I'm pretty sure.
He talked about how for decades,
Good.
the way that the Israelis dealt with terrorism in the territories, where they go in there and pick them off one at a time. You don't have to do a big war like this. How did they kill Sheikh Yassin? They just found him in his car and dropped one bomb on him. I'm not saying that was okay, but I'm saying all other things being equal, the Israelis can pick off the leadership of Hamas.
I mean,
one at a time, no problem. Because again, this is not some foreign nation. This is an Indian reservation. It's under their control.
This is where I always come back to. It's like I see you guys. We're having an argument over a foreign nation's capabilities of defense, and I'm just like, you want to talk about America?
Yeah, I'm just curious what he was. What
I know. I'm not casting shade. I'm saying I think a lot of this debate that ends up in politics reverts back to the normative position of we as the United States are concerned and involved in foreign wars, and I'm kind of like, do you want to talk about Burma, Myanmar? You're like,
right? I don't. Yeah, because we're not in on that one. Right. Yeah,
let's not be in on any of them.
That's right. Look, I totally agree
Myanmar
with that.
is so closed. It's hard to get any information out of
It's
Myanmar.
horrible.
Since 1948,
horrible.
hundreds of thousands of people have died in the region. 12,000 this year, and
talk about ethnic cleansing.
No,
they
nobody
go in and
cares.
So
destroy.
there's one thing that I want to
Because
bring
we're
up
not involved in it.
about. Well, not only that, it's not just that. It's Tim. This goes to a point that you make a lot. You frequently say that the left doesn't have an ideology that's coherent, and to some degree, I think you're right. But I really think that the left broadly is just anti-West, right? They're anti-capitalist, they're anti-America, and anything that's going on that is pushing back against Western society, which is why, like, the people that are pro-Palestine, that are very anti-Israel, if they're leftists, the reason is because Israel is ostensibly a democracy and a Western style country, and so it falls in line with the pushback against the West and the whole decolonization thing.
I also think it's because you want to destroy the United States from within, and so we have foreign influence through social media and algorithms.
Sure, yeah.
And you mentioned they're all anti-West. I'm like, well, we're being gutted from within on purpose.
We started this show with a massive protest at Grand Central Station.
No, I should
of American Jews who are against this stuff.
I'm not saying everyone is, Scott. I'm saying that the people that are like.
I'll tell you, Phil. Look,
I'm not pushing back against what
hear
you said.
No, it's fine. I was just saying.
Just want to shout out to Elad Eliyahu, who's covering this right now.
We're texting her now.
Elad is our in-house Bolton bro, neoconservative, self-proclaimed.
True.
He is, but he does a really great job asking questions. He doesn't attack people. He asks them honestly what they think and believe, and lets them answer.
That's cool.
And he's down here covering it. We're big fans of Elad's work.
I mean, people ought to ask themselves, because look, these Jews, almost all American Jews are basically like center-left liberals. They're not leftist, communist, revolutionary, hate America, whatever, this and that. They're liberal Democrats, almost all of them, right? Like 85, 90% or something like that. They don't want to destroy Western civilization.
The radicals
the
are
reason
in
they're
college.
sticking up, forget the college kids don't mean anything. Let's not spend another minute talking about college kids tonight. We're talking about what actually matters in the world here, okay? And what's happening here is these Jews are sticking up for the Palestinians because they're being treated unfairly, right? If you go back to England versus Ireland, you'd see English stick up for the Irish. You didn't see the Irish take the English's side. Why not? Well, because Ireland wasn't occupying England. It was the English who were the occupying power and who were brutally oppressing innocent civilians. And so you'd have English from time to time saying, geez, guys, this isn't right. Why would you have millions of American Jews opposed to the system in Israel right now?
Well, a bunch of
It's because it's wrong.
Funded by the same
nothing.
Same
man.
groups that fund the SPLC and a bunch of other heavy left.
maybe.
group?
Yeah, the JVA is
Maybe,
funded
but
by
you know what? What it really
groups
is
that
American.
also fund
What it is
the
American
SPLC and
Jews
other
are
leftist causes.
American Jews are liberals and they believe in civil rights. And the fact is, the Palestinians have no civil rights and no civil liberties whatsoever. They would be slaves, except the Israelis don't want them. They just want rid of them. But they have no rights at all. And these people know that that is wrong, and they're upset about it.
They also had Shabbat with Rashida Tlaib after she said that she gets a warm fuzzy feeling when she thinks about the Holocaust.
Is that what she said?
She said
Is that what
something
she
like
said?
that. She said something very similar. I can find it.
I am not a fan. I'm a fan of the sentiment of we don't want civilian deaths, but
Me too.
I just keep coming back to the, I refer to it as Israel derangement syndrome, because for some reason this cause for a lot of people is paramount, despite not being us. Despite all the other conflicts in the world.
But Tim, as you know, we're implicated in every bit of this. Our government is implicated in every bit of this.
People do not get as mad about Sudan.
I wrote a book about the Iranian Revolution, the Iran-Iraq War, the 80s Afghan War, Iraq War I, Iraq War I and a half, Iraq War II, Somalia, Libya, Syria, and Yemen. And there's some Palestine in here. And I'm writing a book about Russia right now.
And why are 16-year-olds chanting in the hallways of their school, "Free, free Palestine"? Do you think these kids?
Who cares? I mean,
I think the media
abolish government school. Then I already won that.
Right, yeah. This is my point. So, why does it always I'm gonna?
Look, when
I'm
I was a kid, we said kill them all, nuke Baghdad, whatever.
And my
which
point
is worse?
I'm just continually at the point where I'm like, y'all can go protest for any country in the world you want. I don't care. They're not us.
In Marjorie Taylor Greene's resolution that she brought before the House to have Rashida Tlaib censured, she said, Tlaib said the Holocaust gave her a calming feeling.
Okay, I want an original source on that.
I watched the video. Like, she actually said that. Are
you serious?
I swear to God, there's a video clip of it. She said it.
I've never even heard of that.
She wasn't like
ridiculous.
It was a broader context, but
it was in 2019.
The overall point was she's like, I had a calming feeling.
I never voted for a Democrat in my life, so I don't give a damn about that.
I did.
And then she said she stood behind her comments.
Look, let me
also
tell you,
2019.
Let me tell you guys something.
I just want to talk about Flint, Michigan.
College communists are bad on everything.
I would talk about Flint, Michigan.
College communists are bad.
College communists are bad on everything. The squad is bad on everything. But so what does that have to do with what we're really talking about here, right? Like, look, why would it be that George H.W. Bush and James Baker 30 years ago thought it was so important to try to negotiate a Palestinian state? Why is it that 20 years ago, Colin Powell
you were saying is that there should be a Palestinian state?
Yes.
So
I'm saying
maybe that's why they have the same reasons as you for wanting to establish it.
That's what I'm saying.
Right.
That's what I'm
they've
saying.
been trying for a very long time.
Right. But so this is what I'm saying is people act like.
But you have the
I'm
Palestinians
paraphrasing.
saying-
I'm plagiarizing Martyr Made here. Okay, he says people act like the Palestinians are this volcano. Like everything is fine, and then every once in a while, this volcano erupts, and there's this violence. But the thing is, everything's not fine. The thing is, these people are under total occupation for longer than the Soviets occupied Eastern Europe. They have no rights whatsoever. That is why James Baker was willing to go to the mat to try to force a Palestinian state 30 years ago. That's why Colin Powell went to the mat and lost 20 years ago. Is because, and what happened was the neoconservatives, which who are the neoconservatives? They're the vanguard of the Israel lobby is who they are. And they convinced Bush that the road to Damascus, the road to Jerusalem runs through Baghdad. First, we do Iraq War II, then we're in the position of strength to force the Palestinians to bow down to our wishes. How did that work out?
Did you? I'm not going to answer. We got to go to Super Chats, but I want you to finish that thought. I don't know if you were done.
No, go ahead.
We're going to go to Super Chats.
Powell lost.
So smash that like button, subscribe to this channel, share the show with your friends. Friday night, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to read your Super Chats, which of course are, it's Israel-Palestine. So contentious. I'm so excited. Okay. Clint Torres says, howdy people. Tim, today you gave a master class in dealing with the delusional. I swear you deserve an honorary PhD in clinical psychology. This morning was an awesome conversation with Cenk Uygur. And for those that watched, you probably noticed there was one point of contention when I began discussing George Floyd and Ahmaud Arbery. Cenk got very heated about that one, did not want to hear any arguments or points, said it was racist. And I felt we're better off focusing on solutions and ideas and try to pull away from what I thought was devolving things into an irrational WWE style drama fight. But that was probably the only point at which I felt like it got to that point. I see a lot of people are saying that I'm very patient or whatever. And it's a mix. There's a lot of people who want me to just tell him he's wrong no matter what, every single step of the way whenever I think he's wrong. But the purpose of a show like this is I'm interviewing the guy and asking him what he thinks so he can try and articulate it and I can get the best honest understanding. But more importantly, when Cenk comes out and starts saying that it's racist to bring up the facts of the case on Ahmaud Arbery, that's for you guys to watch. It's not to see me come out and say something like, it's not for me to argue with him and be like, no, how dare you say that? You think you can come in here? That serves nobody. That's just people eating popcorn and laughing at a fight. I want you to hear what Cenk's argument is, and then you figure out if you agree or disagree. And I think often when it comes to a lot of these arguments, they'll say things that you'll find, hey, that's actually not a well thought out thing to say, or maybe you agree with them. But that's the point, is to have them say it. There was that's
a really smart point to make.
Well, conservatives are trying to get this pro-Palestine event canceled in Texas. And I immediately tweeted like, no way. If you are concerned these people are pro-Hamas or whatever, let them speak.
Right.
And then take those videos and share them. Sure. Let them have their event.
Right. Like with the drag queen stuff.
What you mean with kids?
No, not with kids.
Right.
But like when they do the like, big
that's
protests or whatever. Yeah.
All right. But anyway, we'll read some more. RJ McDougalheim says, damn, so close. Wrath says, maybe not. You guys were not first. Matthew Hammond says, can Lauren Southern do a documentary on COVID lockdowns and businesses that closed? Call it non-essential.
Oh, that would be cool.
One of the people she interviews should be the wife of the former guest, Gary Nerdrotic. I can't pronounce his past name, Buckler. What I will say is we did this documentary with Lauren Southern. We're really excited. But Lauren is going to be working with Tenet, so I don't know to what degree.
What documentary did you do?
With Lauren, we did one. It's called Infringed. It is a exploring. Yeah.
Rad.
Yeah. So Lauren, being Canadian, she takes a look at gun control. She has this like adventure looking at gun control. It's awesome. It's coming out November 7th.
Great.
So we're super excited for it. It was supposed to come out 4th of July. And then there was legal stuff.
Can we get a screener so we
Yes.
can write about it in advance? And then
Absolutely.
we'll drop it when you put it out.
And
awesome.
I'm told it's exciting and fun. And Lauren shoots a lot of guns.
That's
and
great.
we like guns. So
That's awesome.
But yeah, that's coming up soon. And then I'm also just really excited. I don't know if you guys saw the trailer that was released by Tenet Media. We're doing a super group. All right. So Benny Johnson, Dave Rubin, me, Taylor Hansen. It's Taylor, right? I always get his name wrong.
Yeah.
Yes.
Lauren Southern. I think there's Matt Christensen. I'm super excited about Matt Christensen. Shout out to Matt Christensen. He's amazing. Love his work. But we're basically, we're putting together the super group. So it's a bunch of various projects that are coming together, and I think it's wildly beneficial. But I don't want to say too much because, there's other people involved too. But the Culture War show will be moving there. There's a lot more going on, but super excited for this.
Matt Christian's great. I didn't know that he was involved in Tenet. He's great. I really like his streams.
That's awesome. That was like, when this super group is coming together, and I'm like, yeah, and they're like, Matt's involved. I was like, oh, really? I was like, okay, well, now send me, let me know what's going on. And then I talked to everybody who's involved, and I think it's really, really smart. It's one of the smartest moves in new media, in my opinion.
Nice.
Yeah. I don't want to get into too much detail until they do their formal launch and everything. They put the trailer out, but there's a lot I could elaborate on why I think it is really, really smart. There are people saying things like, Tim, you're supposed to be independent. What are you doing? It's like, yes. Timcast is an entirely separate company. We did a deal with them so that we could. It's a multi-front battle in the culture war. But I really do think there's a lot more to be said, and I'll save it for when they do all their big announcements and they want to. I don't want to step on anyone's toes, but it's going to be epic. So it's really, really cool stuff. I think it's going to amplify the reach of many people involved. It's a tremendous move, I think, in winning the culture war. We all talked with a lot of people about the strategy and stuff. I'm really excited for this. So let's read some more. Shane H. Wilder says, great job with the culture war. I'm glad it was a civil discussion, even if I still disagree with Cenk. Regardless, these conversations need to be had. Keep it up. I think the most important thing that came out of that was the question over who has a right to be president. And I know a lot of conservatives will have the more immediate response of, you have to be born in this country or born to American parents. And my point was, Chinese Communist Party members having a surrogate in California give birth to their son, who is now a natural born citizen, who within an hour of being born is flown back to China, who is raised in China, and then a loyal CCP member comes to the United States and wants to be president. That doesn't make sense. So the line isn't just if you were born here, because there's issues that we have to deal with right now with people coming here just to, having their kids just to be born here so they get these rights and access. So the question is, what should the test and restriction be if we're going to have one? Cenk made interesting points. I don't completely agree. He argued the 14th Amendment has already determined you can be president even if you weren't born here. I don't think the Supreme Court sides with him, but he's saying he's going to win and all that stuff. He has to say that, to be fair, he's making the argument. But, my point was, who would you rather have as president? Someone who is a Chinese Communist Party member and official who was born in California, spent 3 days here, and then was raised in China, or Dinesh D'Souza?
Well, I'd rather have Dinesh.
But he wasn't born here, so he can't be president. Sorry, you get the CCP member.
But he's very smart. But I don't know why anyone would vote for the CCP. I don't know why those are the only options.
It's not.
I never could figure out why in a country of 300 million people we got to settle for the scum that run for the highest office in this country.
Because in a country that has so much opportunity like America, people that are skilled and that can do things go do actually good things.
Why aren't you running?
Come on. You know what I am?
Come on.
I'm a great advisor to Libertarian Party presidential candidates. That's what I am. And you know what? I screwed up. I forgot to say during the main part of the show, I got an article on antiwar.com today, the Spotlight article. It's full of quotes. In fact, if anyone's collecting these quotes, it's your ultimate resource for quotes of Benjamin Netanyahu and his men explaining why they like Hamas ruling the Gaza Strip so they don't have to deal in good faith with the Palestinians on the West Bank. And I got a list of quotes this long. It's the Spotlight on antiwar.com right now.
Here's an important question. And with respect, because we're huge fans of Dave Smith, why isn't Dave Smith running for president?
I have no comment on that.
Because he's got a wife and kid. That his kid had I don't know for sure. That it's not like I know.
That's
I talked to him, but he's got his kid has a heart condition.
I get it. I mean no disrespect when I ask. My point is, running for president is very, very, very hard. You have to have something deeply wrong with you. Dave Smith would have to be like, my family's not important to decide to run for president.
Oh, I don't think that's true. I mean, especially as a libertarian, you could do a half-assed job and still be,
All right, Dave, where are you at?
The problem that we've had in the Libertarian Party for a very long time, since Harry Brown, is we've essentially, Badnarik was, I don't know. We have presidential candidates who don't understand the philosophy and don't know how to talk about it and don't know, we have Bob Barr and Gary Johnson, and that's right. I'll tell you a story.
Where were you to whisper in his ear?
I'll tell you where I was. I wrote Gary Johnson a memo this long about Syria the night before that happened.
No. Are you kidding me?
I swear to God. And which was all about what? It was all about Gary. Barack Obama is backing Al-Qaeda in Syria right now, bro. Like, I was hitting him with some good stuff.
You're only making me hate him more.
And I swear, this is what he answered me. He answered me back.
Libertarian.
Thanks. Right? Not like, wait a minute, can I call you and ask you some follow-up questions? Because this is crazy.
Gary
right?
Johnson!
But wait, listen. The funny thing about the Aleppo moment is, do you know what Trump would have said?
Oh, no.
Look, Aleppo is interesting. I know a lot of people are talking about it, but I'm focused on jobs.
That's
The
right,
Americans-
That's right. He would have pretended to know.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that the more important thing is jobs, and then,
Well, he's right. The more important thing is jobs.
Yeah.
And what's so funny is,
States and-
what's so funny about that too, is that if he had known what he was talking about, if he'd cared at all to know about the Syria war, he could have had such a great fight with them. Because you want to talk about Aleppo? I'll tell you about Aleppo. That's where Barack Obama backs the suicide bomber, head chopper murderers of Al-Qaeda, and where the secular dictator with the clean-shaven chin in the three-piece suit who protects the rights of Christians and Shiites and other minorities in the country, is trying to save that city from America's mercenary terrorist forces. And
So you're
what
a
were they
Tony for
saying?
Russia.
Yeah, exactly. And what were they saying at the time? They were saying that Assad is committing genocide. Assad is attempting to murder every last man, woman, and child in his own country. And luckily, Al-Qaeda is there. The moderate rebels are trying to stand up to him and prevent him from accomplishing this. But then what happened? Just after that, within a couple of months after that, not even, a few weeks after that, the Assad government finished retaking that town. The jihadists all got on buses to the Idlib province. And then what happened? They had Christmas. And all the Christians came back.
Wow.
And all the civilian population of Aleppo came back. The city was saved by Bashar al-Assad from the real genocidal murderer, Barack Hussein Obama.
All right,
And
we'll
Benjamin
read some more.
Netanyahu.
Sparky Wire says, Tim's unhinged financial advice. Sleep in the park with $5,000 in your backpack. You got to risk it for the biscuit. Sorry, if you're not willing to do to take those risks, you don't win. That's just the way it's going to be. You gotta bet big to win big. Now, look, I'll in all honesty, in all seriousness, I wouldn't recommend anybody do what I do in terms of risk. And I got to.
You take a lot of wacky risks and you do a lot of wacky things. It's all.
Oh, I love
it's all-
doing wacky things.
I
What
love
happened
it.
to that mini
I think
mega
it's
you were going to
awesome.
build here, man?
Oh man.
I would love to see a map, like.
It,
of all
I
the
don't want
places
to.
you've
I don't want to
been.
besmirch the good name of friends of mine, but I'll tell you afterwards. It's more of a private thing. It's kind of just like, business stuff. So we're it's coming. It's just it's gonna be
is,
somewhere
yeah.
else.
Okay.
Yeah. So
I got to tell you, I want to try it, but also I'm so terrified.
Oh, we have a big project with the new skate park stuff that we're doing, and we're really, really excited. So I don't know if you've been posting yet. It's called The Boonies. It's the skate show and project we're doing. We're producing a lot of content. But my
That's a
real
great
point.
name.
I like it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Scott, next time you come, no matter what you think, bring the skateboard.
I'm bringing my board next time. We had a great session last time.
After the show, it's like midnight. I am dead tired, and he's like, "You have to skate." I did a kickflip pivot on the mini ramp.
Hey.
He did do a kickflip pivot on the mini ramp.
I'm like, that's not bad.
He's got a mean hard flip. Well, he showed us this video earlier, but I seen with my own eyeballs a mean hard flip. And what do you call that? Hang 10 hard flip?
Yeah, hang
thing?
10 hard flip.
I love that. That's awesome.
almost hang 10 hard flip, late flip. I've done them, but
I landed an ollie blunt, and I still remember telling myself, "Do not bail. These boys are looking at you. Feet on grip tape, Horton."
So
And I
as
landed it.
for the sleeping in the park with a ton of money, what I will say is, to varying degrees, you must determine the amount of risk you are willing to take, and I would not recommend anyone take any risk. If someone comes to me and says, I want to go report from Turkey and Istanbul during mass protests, I would say, don't ask me because I'll tell you not to do it. Why? I will not be responsible for the risks you decide to take because I'm not you. That being said, I take a whole lot of crazy risks, and boy, do they pay off. So
Weren't you there for the Kyrgyzstan coup in 2005 or something like that?
What? I'm not that old. I was in the Gezi Park protests, but I know to get out of war. And I have no problem saying this. I have no illusions of grandeur. When civil unrest results in war, I'm gone 3 hours before that happens.
Sure.
And I'm like, you need military veterans to be reporting from these locations. You need people with actual war experience because it's about two things. I got no problem risking my own life, but I cannot be responsible for someone else's. And I've been in some serious conflict stuff where they have strapped people to my ankles and I'm like, I have to keep this person alive now. I am not the person for that job. I am not a medic. I am not a first responder. I'm not a soldier. I would not be able to handle that. I have no problem running and jumping over walls and breathing in tear gas and bullets are flying and I'm hitting the deck. But the moment you put someone with me who doesn't have any capabilities. And I know if I abandon them, I was in Venezuela. They're National Guard. They're shooting at people. So they had been shooting people in the past. So when these protests happened, they weren't shooting where I was, I don't believe. When something snapped between the National Guard and the students, everyone runs. I yell to my crew, move now, run. And I run and I look back and they're just standing there staring at the National Guard with rifles and they're marked. And I'm like, oh my God. Like they're going to die. And so I lost it. I said, guys, we're leaving. I will not be here to pick up your remains. Like people are being shot and killed in this place. It wasn't a war zone. It was civil unrest with live ammo. That's my limit. And I'm like, I couldn't imagine being actually in Syria or Afghanistan or anything like that. I could not handle that. And so that for me was like, if you can't do this, if you're not trained, I'm sorry, I am not skilled enough to be able to be a fixer for you guys. And I think about, there are a lot of journalists I know who are dumb as a box of rocks, and they'll get some Iraq war veteran to be their security head. And I'm like, what a job.
Yeah, that's.
I'm like, yikes, man.
I wouldn't put anyone in that position.
Yeah.
For myself, my own dumb journalist self, I wouldn't.
When the security guys, when I would be, they would make us do these security things like coordination and prep. I'll give you a better story. I was in Brazil interviewing the BOPI. I think it was the BOPI. It could have been the CARE or whatever it's called. SWAT cops. They had this mock favela. And they're explaining how they go in to deal with the gang members and the cartels and all that stuff.
It was like their own cop city?
No, it's not a cop city. It's a fake favela. It's a training center that's designed to be like a favela. And we're on the top of a building. And he's explaining it's very narrow corridors. And I said, what do you do now? You're up here. The guy jumps and he smiles and he grabs the wall and he jumps down. And then I jump down right after him and he's like, yeah. And he gives me a high five. Like I just jumped off a building with this guy. So he's like, I've had meetings with security guards and I'm like, I've been skateboarding for 20 years. And they're like, okay, good. So when I tell you, you move, you'll be quick. I get it. And then you have the other journalists who are morbidly obese and don't know what gunshots sound like and they're like, all right. Yeah. But we got to read some more. But my point ultimately there is if someone comes to me and says, Tim, I'd like to report for you in the Middle East, I'd say, nope, because I can't be responsible for you. A lot of news organizations will not allow you. They will not hire you. It won't happen. This is why they do hire military veterans. So if you're like, Tim said, sit in the park with $5,000, I'm like, oh, bro, I've done crazier things than that. I mean, come on. I'm driving into active riots and people shooting at each other. That's way crazier than carrying a bunch of money in your pocket. But you got to figure out the amount of risk you're willing to take to get the biscuit. You got to risk it for the biscuit. Is that a skateboarding thing or was it? I don't know. People say it in skateboarding.
I never heard that phrase until right now.
Risk it for the biscuit?
But I like it.
It does rhyme.
Yeah, so I think we just had some skaters here. Dude did a kickflip, blunt kickflip. It's like you got to risk it for the. I know. I'll show you the video.
I'll tell you this. There's a vert ramp going up somewhere in Texas. That's going to be 12 feet with extensions with pool coping. It's going to be 150 feet wide, half a football field wide. So a vert ramp going in.
We got to
saving my legs and my elbows for that one.
We got to read more super chats. Logan Culver says, Scott, do you have a photographic memory? Your ability to pull up all this info is amazing.
Yes, I do have a photographic memory. I can. One of my real advantages. When I was a boy, third grade. My hero was Encyclopedia Brown, and the crime solver, and his thing is he remembers everything he reads, and that's really my talent. And I kind of picture I can remember the colors and the shape of the website. Really helps me remember where I read what and when and that kind of thing.
Is this Dom says General Clark wanted to attack Russian military in Kosovo. James Blunt and his CO refused Clark's orders to attack a Russian-controlled airport.
Yeah, so this is what I was mentioning earlier about the World War III there. Yeah,
Clark would have started World War III in the 90s. He's a warmonger.
That's right. So when he says James Blunt, this is the singer, who I'm not familiar with his songs, but I think he's like a real famous guy, right?
Wait, the singer?
An English singer. Yes, James Blunt. He was a colonel. Yes.
Is that the You're Beautiful guy?
It gets better. Yes, that's the guy.
Yeah?
That's the guy. Okay, and then it gets better. It gets better. Wesley Clark ordered James Blunt to take his men and seize the Pristina airport after the Russians took it. And the Russians weren't supposed to take it, but they went in there and they got the Pristina airport. Clark ordered Blunt to take the airport. And then guess who intervened and stopped him? General Michael Jackson. of the British Army told.
You're lying.
I swear to God,
We live in a simulation.
General Michael Jackson said, "Belay that order, Blunt," and told General Clark, "I'm not going to start World War III for you."
Then he moonwalked across the battlefield.
Exactly. Right. And then, by the way, so Clark also was in charge of Fort Hood during Waco.
It's not Fort Hood anymore, isn't it? Like
whatever they
Fort
name it now.
Native American Special Man.
Fort PC, but he was the boss during Waco, and General Shoemaker, who was the commander of Delta Force, it's really General Shoemaker who murdered those people, but he was working for Clark at the time, and so those men's responsibility for that is still to come due.
Legama says, Tim, I'd like to see this man debate historian Benny Morris about the 1948 war.
Oh, boy, wouldn't that
I
be
would
fun?
love to see his ignorance humbled.
Oh, that would be hilarious. All I would do is read Benny Morris to Benny Morris. Are you kidding me? This guy ought to read what Benny Morris has written, the truth. Benny Morris is, I'll have you know.
We should do a culture war episode.
Here's two things to know about Benny Morris. He has done more.
Phil.
He has done more to tell the truth about what happened during the Nakba to the poor people of Palestine than probably anyone else. He's a revisionist historian in Israel. And then he also is a total hawk who says that they should have finished the job and cleansed them all the way out of there. So he's a total hawk, but he's an honest guy. And he has done probably more for establishing the real truth of what happened in the Nakba than any other Israeli historian. I would love to debate Benny Morris, Tim. You make that happen for me, buddy. And I'll bring my skateboard that day.
Well, we should definitely do a culture war where we can find somebody who would like to have a debate with you on all this stuff. If you'd be interested,
I'm happy to do it.
That'd be great.
Man. I'm happy to do it. I know a lot of people were hoping that I could debate Ben Shapiro here, but I don't think he'll show up.
Here?
Sure.
Well, here's the issue. Ben Shapiro runs a company and hosts his own show. So the idea that it's like
he'd go on a neutral thing.
No, it's not about being neutral. It's I say this about Hassan and Cenk Uygur. I'm like, guys, if someone's got a full-time job where they're running a company and hosting a show, if someone said, Tim Pool, why don't you fly to LA and debate a guy? I'll be like, well, I'm running a company. We got like 40 employees. I got to host my show.
You know what?
It's
I took a week off of writing my book to read nothing but Israel stuff and prepare for this show to come out here and try to do my best for you guys. And I have a lot of jobs.
No, I get it.
But I think it's worth it. And by the way, Shapiro, I challenge you, dude. I saw you say on Joe Rogan that you're willing to debate this issue, but I think you're a coward, and I don't think you are man enough.
Well, I got to tell you, I don't think that is conducive to actually having the conversation with him.
Well, except you know what, Gene Epstein already invited him to debate me for money at the Soho Forum in New York, and he wouldn't do it. And so what ended up happening was I instead debated Bill Kristol and drove him into the ground. Have you ever seen that?
It was awesome.
Oh, you'll like it. I debated Bill Kristol and smashed him because Ben Shapiro wasn't man enough to show up.
Well, we have to make sure it is the Steelmanist of Steelmanist debates.
Sure.
So we don't want to get any half-assed,
Agree.
Not for Bill Kristol. Bill Kristol's garbage. He's wrong about everything. Everything.
And look, I didn't straw man Bill Kristol either. I don't do straw man, dude.
No,
I don't want to win a rigged game. There ain't no honor in that.
We want to put the heavyweights against the heavyweights.
The only problem is with debating Ben Shapiro is I'm not sure if I could stop myself from laughing the whole time he's talking, from the sound of his voice.
You're not going to get a debate by but in all seriousness, why would he debate you if you're just insulting him?
Okay, you know what? He wouldn't already. We already tried this. And I was actually very polite at the time and said, hey, seriously, man, I'd like to discuss this with you. We could do a whole thing, and tried to be very adult about it. And he refused to respond in any way to Gene Epstein's offer to have us debate at Soho.
Cenk Uygur has said some really awful things about me. He's yelled at me in person, and I still say I don't insult him. I try to agree with him when I can. Yeah, sure. And he eventually said, you know what, I'll come on Tim's show and we'll talk.
He came on because he's running for president.
Tim, you know Tim, you know that Ben Shapiro will only debate college girls who are confused about their gender identity or some crap. He'll make fun of some little kid. He's not. Have you ever seen him debate a grown man about an actual subject of import of any kind?
He'll go to college. I don't watch Ben's content.
Yeah, I don't either. Yeah. But I see him in the right-hand margin on YouTube for some reason every single day, no matter what. And it's always, Ben Shapiro destroys 19-year-old girl who doesn't know the difference between a girl and a boy. Okay, well, that's, really impressive, I guess.
Look, that's what, there's a Supreme Court justice that doesn't know the difference between a girl and a boy. So.
Fair point. But
in all seriousness, why don't we find someone who's very, top tier,
I'm happy to do it.
Best
I'm
the
happy to do
best.
it. Yeah. And look, I think this is something that you guys deal with a lot when you're dealing with the left is all these ridiculous accusations of racism. You guys were talking about some of this a little bit earlier in the show today. But it's the same thing on the right with the claims about anti-Semitism. I bet you could probably testify to this more than any other person or just as well as me. That any person involved with online alternative media can tell you that anyone who's actually an anti-Semite will tell you that they are and will try to convince you to also be. And so when you hear right-wingers throwing around Jew hater and anti-Semite when we're talking about Israel-Palestine, that ought to sound as ridiculous in your ear as when everybody calls you a racist just because you disagree about the minimum wage or whatever it is that they're stupid on, you know?
All right, we'll read some more. Missykin says, Tim, how did you not want to punch Cenk during the Culture War interview today for saying you attract right-wingers because you look at the nuance in each of the high-profile police killings? I don't want to hit. I don't want to hit anyone, ever. Sometimes in self-defense you have to. I think the most I've ever gotten is saying that I wanted to punch my monitor screen or something. But you know, it's about tech. But no. Listen. People need to understand this. Cenk performed as I hoped he would. The first and foremost, the most important thing, we agree on a lot. I'm like, if we can be. I said,
what were y'all mostly talking about?
Foreign war, I think. Well, I don't know. It's 2 hours and 40 minutes. Probably a bunch of things. But what stood out to me is I said, if we can win where we agree, we should focus on those things.
Yeah.
Max Blumenthal said that. And I said, if Mitt Romney was running against Joe Biden, I'd vote Cenk Uygur. Why? At least we get Julian Assange pardoned. All right. And I can bet he's not going to start foreign wars. Now, all the other stuff I think is probably going to be awful. But and I say Romney, not that he's running, but because he's the example of that garbage Republican and Joe Biden is the garbage Democrat, they're going to screw me over every way and have war. So like if the best I can get is Cenk, who is for gun control and a bunch of woke policy and stuff, you know, that's what I wanted to focus on. But understand when I began talking about George Floyd and then he lost it, I'm like, I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm asking you, what is the answer to, there is a man behind the wheel of an SUV chewing on a speedball, methamphetamine and fentanyl. Should the police not intervene? He says they shouldn't. I'm like, okay. And when the police do and the man resists, what should they do? And he's like, I can't believe you're defending it. I said, okay, well then, he's like, the most high profile case. I said, let's talk about Ahmaud Arbery. I said, and he goes, oh, you mean when the two racist guys killed that jogger? And I'm like, okay, right here is the point. If you don't know the facts of the case, and he's like, I can't believe you would even say this and blah, blah, blah. But that's the point. I want everyone to see Cenk say that. Cenk wants everyone to see Cenk say that. The wager both of us have made is that I believe the average person will be repelled by what he said. He believes the average person will agree and be attracted to what he said. I'll take my wager. I think what he said was repellent. But he said it because he believes it. I'm glad he did. We had a great conversation. I'm not mad about it. I'm like, thank you for saying that.
It was really interesting.
I'm now going to show my friends and family, and I say, this is what an argument looks like when you try bringing up the nuance in a criminal trial.
Yeah, that made me mad.
Well, I was just really glad to see the conversation. I mean, it's so rare, and you guys talked about this in the interview. Like, it's so rare to see people from, you know, sort of divergent political perspectives actually have a conversation.
Sure.
You know?
Yeah.
Well, Max Blumenthal came on. I said the same. He said the same thing. He's like, we're probably going to disagree on a lot, and I'm like, then let's just win all of the things we can win on that we want, and then go back to complaining about each other. Is that fair? Like,
I totally agree with that.
Let's
Listen,
do it.
look, I'm a libertarian, and so that means I know that no matter what, like if I die at 85, we're still going to be a tiny minority of the population of the country. So I can try to recruit as many new libertarians as I can, but I also just want to help the right and the left to prioritize to be the least worst right and the left that they could be as well. You know what I mean?
The majority of this country is anti-war.
I absolutely agree with that, and especially that it's really changing on the right. Unfortunately, this Israel thing has really kind of thrown a monkey wrench in the America First right, but only temporarily, I think.
It was interesting, though, to hear Mike Johnson talk about funding for Israel today, because he at least said that any money that he would advocate for to go to Israel would have to come from somewhere else in the budget.
From Americans to go overseas.
I mean, he didn't say that. I would ideally say that, you know, it would be pulled from different foreign
By the way,
programs.
you know, hang on. Libby asked me a question earlier that I actually didn't get a chance to answer, but I'll just be real brief about the because we talked about 48 a little bit, but just kind of this ongoing narrative that the Israelis keep trying to give the Palestinians a state and they always say no, that's just really not true. And in fact, I have a book here that I was reading today. I didn't quite finish it today, but it's what really happened, or the secret history of Camp David in the year 2000, and how Arafat just took all the blame, that they tried to give him a whole state and he refused to do it. And it's just not true. And what happens is they essentially set him up to be the rejectionist. And then they go, aha, see? And in fact, in the book, they show where Bill Clinton agreed and promised Arafat, if it all falls apart, I promise I won't blame you, because you're right. They're being real sticklers about this, that, and the other. Forget the details for a second, but the deal is not coming through. The Israelis are not being as generous as they say, whatever. And then when the deal falls apart, they go, aha, it's all his fault. And we tried to give him a state, but he refused to accept it because you know how those Arabs are and all this kind of stuff. But just to provide one footnote for that too, is people can look this up. This was a leak from 2011. It was leaked to The Guardian and to Al Jazeera. It's called the Palestine Papers.
Was it in the sock drawer? Was this part of the Bill Clinton sock drawer?
I don't think so.
Totally separate.
There was some, if you're talking about Sandy Berger stealing documents, that's a different thing. But these Palestine Papers reveal that the Palestinian Authority under Mahmoud Abbas they have just been bending over backwards to accommodate the Israelis. They've been willing to give up all of their claims on East Jerusalem. They've been willing to give up all their claims on all but like the 3 biggest settlements that prevent the West Bank from being contiguous and this kind of deal. And then it's the Israelis who won't negotiate in good faith. And you can read the Palestine Papers that they really demonstrate this.
All right.
Is the case.
We're going to wrap it up there, everybody. If you haven't already, would you kindly smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, share the show with your friends, become a member at timcast.com. If you want to support our work, it's Friday. So we're going to go take some days to relax, but I'm always reading the news. We're going to have clips up throughout the weekend. It's going to be great. You can follow the show at Timcast IRL. You can follow me personally everywhere at Timcast. Scott, do you want to shout anything out?
Check out my guys at the Libertarian Institute. I got a great group of guys. We get the best guy at Cato, Ted Carpenter, got fired for being too good on Ukraine. Now he writes for me. Okay. Cool. And I got the world famous and heroic James Bovard. We're about to publish his book, Last Rights, The Death of American Liberty. We're about to publish Tom Wood's book, Diary of a Psychosis, How Public Health Failed Us During COVID Mania. And, you'll love this one. Domestic Imperialism. 9 Reasons I Left Progressivism by Keith Knight.
Awesome.
You're going to love it. It's so good. And he's just brilliant. And then, of course, all the bad news in the world at antiwar.com. Check out my show, The Scott Horton Show. I got 6,000 interviews going back to 2003, proving that me and my guys are right about everything. And read my book, Enough Already, Time to End the War on Terrorism.
Right on.
I am Phil That Remains on Twix. I am Phil That Remains Official on Instagram. The band is All That Remains. You can find us on Spotify, on YouTube, on Amazon Music, on Pandora. You know, the internet. Scott, you were awesome. Thank you so much.
Oh, and I'm on Twitter at Scott Horton Show too. And thank you. I'm very grateful for you having me here today.
Oh yeah, no, anytime, man. It's been a blast. Libby?
I'm Libby Emmons. You can find me on Twitter. I'm not cool enough to say Twix. At Libby Emmons.
You just said it.
I know, but I can't make it work. No. And you can find all the great work we're doing at thepostmillennial.com and humanevents.com. And if you'd like to subscribe, it's thepostmillennial.com/subscribe. Thanks.
And I'm Serge.com. I'm rooting for the Bucks. You should too. We can beat the All Blacks. We have a better record than them, I think. I don't know. I have to look into that. I'm not really sure. But it's the most important thing in the world, guys. South Africa needs to win the cup. Please, we need that Webb Ellis back. I'm going to be playing music in D.C. later tonight. Cheers.
And some point soon, we got the music set up too. So I'm telling Phil he's got to play some music. And
Dennis Prager to debate Scott might be good.
Oh, I'd do that.
We can ask him, but we'll figure it out. All right, everybody. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll have clips up throughout the week and weekend, and then we'll see you on Monday.
That's a good idea.